It's time for TWiT This Week in Tech, our news roundtable, and we've got a great roundtable for you. From left to right, Alex Lindsay from OfficeHours.global and, of course, MacBreak Weekly. From the Register, we've got Iain Thomson and my buddy, science fiction author, speaker extraordinaire, Cory Doctorow, who actually coined the word of the year. We'll talk about that. Also about Apple, the Vision Pro, their decision to charge 27% for stores that aren't using Apple's store on the iPhone, and a whole lot more. It's going to be a great TWiT coming up next. This show is brought to you by Cisco Meraki. Without a cloud-managed network, businesses inevitably fall behind. Experience the ease and efficiency of Meraki's single platform to elevate the place where your employees and customers come together. Cisco Meraki maximizes uptime and minimizes loss to digitally transform your organization. Meraki's intuitive interface, increased connectivity, and multi-site management keep your organization operating seamlessly and securely wherever your team is. Let Cisco Meraki's 24/7 available support help your organization's remote, on-site, and hybrid teams always do their best work. Visit meraki.cisco.com/twit.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT, This Week in Tech, episode 963, recorded Sunday, January 21st, 2024. Low-key Clippy. This Week in Tech is brought to you by Stamps.com. A new year is full of surprises. One thing that's predictable, postage costs will increase again in 2024. Stamps.com has been helping businesses like yours save time and money for over 25 years. And they've been a partner of this show for more than a decade. If you haven't tried them yet, what are you waiting for? We use Stamps.com for everything. And I love it that I can print forever stamps from Stamps.com so I don't have to worry about postal hikes. Yes, print them with my computer on my printer. Get your own personal post office wherever you are. Order shipping and mailing supplies and more from their supply store. Stamps.com automatically tells you your cheapest and fastest shipping options. All you need is a computer and printer. Take care of orders on the go with their mobile app and schedule a package pickup through your dashboard. Stamps.com seamlessly connects with every major marketplace and shopping cart if you sell products online. And man, the discounts for both United States Postal Service and UPS are up to 89%. So with Stamps.com, you don't have to be this guy. See this? Postage due, $3.21. Join Stamps.com. He puts it on the USB scale, prints out. He even printed out the postage, but he did it wrong. Not with Stamps.com. You'll always pay exactly what you need to pay, and in many cases, a lot less than you think. Take a chunk out of your mailing and shipping costs this year with Stamps.com. Sign up with the promo code TWiT. You'll get a special offer that includes the 4-week trial, the free postage, that digital scale. You don't want to be this guy. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page, and enter the code TWiT. It's time for TWiT This Week in Tech. A great show ahead, I know, because this is a great panel. Alex Lindsay is joining us, slumming from MacBreak Weekly. Hello, Alex.
It's good to be here.
It's good to see you. Also with us, the wonderful Iain Thomson from the Register.com. Hello, Iain.
Hello there. Welcome.
I'm waiting for the day when those bookshelves snap in the middle of a show. They seem overburdened slightly.
Well, I got a comment on the last TWiT I did with you where you've never read all those books. It's like, seriously, there's like 4 more of these things.
I know you've read them. Yeah. He's a literate man. And then we go to the bookshelves of one Mr. Cory Doctorow, who's written half the books on the shelf. They seem to be creating a life of their own. In fact, it looks like quadriceps is emerging now from the bookshelves.
Yeah, I definitely, there's a reason my domain is craphound.com. Let's just leave it.
Actually, the bezel is about to come out in audiobook. You've got a Kickstarter for that, yeah?
Yeah, so Will Wheaton read the audio.
Nice.
And as with all my other audiobooks, Amazon refuses to carry it. So though the book is coming from Macmillan and Bloomsbury in the UK, I had to make my own audio. And so there I am kickstarting it. You can get the DRM free audio, the DRM free ebook. You can pre-order the hardcovers. You can get signed hardcovers. And there's one opportunity left to name a character in the next one of these books, which comes out next year. This is one of the Martin Ensh books, the sequel to Red Team Blues.
He is determined to make a forensic accountant the next James Bond. And I, for one, support this.
Damn right. I mean, look, there are so many ways to make money disappear into a spreadsheet. And every time I come across a bit of spreadsheet skullduggery, I'm so delighted. Like the academic fraud where they caught the scholar, the highest paid academic at, I believe, MIT. No, it was Harvard, fudging her data, and she'd saved it out not as a CSV but as an XLSX, which embeds all the document history. So I can actually watch her by rolling the document backwards. They can watch her clicking in the cells and changing the numbers, and they're attributed to her and her licensed copy. I mean, this is the golden age of fraud, but it's like the golden age of fraud forensics.
Don't tell people too much, though, Cory. We want them to continue making those dumb mistakes.
You know what? I am convinced after 20 years of going to InfoSec conferences that you can explain with eye-watering detail all the ways that people can screw up, and they will continue to screw up. Absolutely.
I love it when they redact stuff on PDFs.
That was an absolute goldmine for journalists. I mean, we were just more of that, please.
I love it when Sam Bankman-Fried and his friends have a group chat called Wire Fraud. I mean, come on.
Well, it was ironic, a wire fraud.
Yeah, it was ironic.
Yeah.
Like when Jeff Bezos called that program to extract large discounts from small publishers, Project Gazelle, and exhorted his managers to view themselves as cheetahs hunting down and killing the most sickly and weak gazelles in the pack.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Your Honor, this wasn't an anti-competitive act.
Gazelles, they're beautiful,
gazelles.
Graceful animals. If it would have been better if you'd name it Sick and Dying Gazelle, then we'd know. Right. We are here gathered together today in the first week of the ascendancy of the Vision Pro headset, the new future. Soon we will all be wearing computers on our foreheads. Alex, did you buy one?
I'm doing the neck exercise. I got 2 weeks to get ready. I hear it's really heavy. So that's the big thing that I've heard. And so I've talked to some friends that have gotten tested and they just say, well, it's heavy. So I have ordered one. So they just, so I'm doing some, just I've got some weights. I got that little head thing and I've been like trying to work on my neck a little bit so that it doesn't feel as heavy. But I've got one coming.
It's extremely important that you prepare. It was funny. All the YouTubers, including Marquez Brownlee, saying, oh man, this thing turns out to be, it's not actually more heavy than the Oculus Pro, I don't think, but the way they're offloading the weight with a strap apparently is not.
Well, I think that the issue is that nobody has been given, no one has been given one with a strap over the top. Now it is coming, it's supposed to ship with the strap over the top. And I think that they just didn't want pictures of it. I think Apple didn't want anyone taking pictures with the strap over the top. And so they didn't send it to any of the reviewers. So now all the reviewers, now all the reviewers complain about how heavy it is. Once the strap's over the top, it's probably going to be pretty well distributed just fine.
Yeah.
I've been reading some of the reviews. I mean, Apple is notoriously harsh on journalists that don't give them an absolutely, perfect record. But even then, people are just like, well, the battery pack's a bit of a pain. The weight, it's okay but after 30 minutes, your neck gets tired. It doesn't seem like they've really done anything.
It's a fine art of knowing exactly. And by the way, only reason I know this is because I have gone too far. But it's a fine art of knowing how far you can go to show your editorial independence without actually pissing Apple off to the point where they stop letting you have these things or see them early and so forth.
I don't think that's what editorial independence means.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I first came over here,
it's the appearance. It's Caesar's wife's editorial. You have to appear to be editorial independent.
Well, no, I mean, when I first came over here, I got invited to a couple of Apple events, and the first one I was very positive about. I think it was an iPod launch. And the second one, it was just kind of like, no, okay, this is bad and this is bad. That's it. Blacklisted forever after.
I feel I am pretty bullish on Apple stuff, but in any case, I've been calling this one Tim Cook's folly. There is some data already that this might have some headwinds. 3 of the big developers, the app developers, 3 of whom have complained about Apple's 30% VIG in the App Store, have declined to make apps for the Vision Pro. Netflix, Spotify, and YouTube will all be missing on the shipping Vision Pro. One of them said, well, you can still use the browser. Like, that's a good experience. But it's widely thought, Mark Gurman thinks it's kind of retaliation.
Well, the issue, though, is that I think that for Apple, because Apple makes music and because Apple has their own video, Netflix and Spotify not jumping into the headset, number one, it doesn't affect them at all because the sales are so low. It's noise.
It's an easy thing to do.
It doesn't make as much difference for them. But the YouTube might be a bit missed as far as being able to watch those things. But again, as they said, you can watch it through the browser. But the other thing is that
no Google, no Facebook.
It's not really. It doesn't really move the needle. I mean, Facebook's not going to do it because they have their own headset. They don't want to.
They never famously made an iPad app either, so it doesn't.
Yeah. So I think that's. But I think that the where it's a real boom is for small developers, because if you're a developer right now, 80,000 sales. Most likely the rumors are 80 to 100,000 sales already. At that number. That's a really small number for Netflix. Like almost not like I can't see that number. They can't see that number of people in their spreadsheet. But if I was able to put out something that's really cool for $5 and I can sell 10,000 of them or 20,000 of them into a market of people who already spent $4,000 on their headset and are willing to look at anything cool, it's a really good opportunity for small developers to get in and do things and play in a place where the larger developers may go, well, I'm going to wait until there's 2 or 3 million or 5 million.
Sure,
and
Alex.
this is where this market opens up.
But if you're selling a $3,500 device, the chief thing seems to be you can watch movies in it, and there's no Netflix and there's no YouTube. I think that does some damage. Cory, are you bullish on nerd helmets?
So I am so astigmatic that I can't even converge that stuff. I live with a technology executive for a major movie studio who happens to be married to me. And she is also a former champion video game player. She played Quake for England. And so we have all the headsets. Yeah, seriously. And so, so she's in charge of like zombie defense and VR in our house. And for me, I just try to avoid them because I get just blinding headaches from using it. I assume that's because my eyes are looking at it wrong.
Right.
In Steve Jobs.
You're looking at it wrong.
Yeah. I mean, they are doing like corrective lenses for the headsets, but they cost an extra $200.
And when I went through the order process, they also said something. You upload your prescription, but they said, do you have what was it? Delta in your prescription?
Prism. I think it's for astigmatism, I think.
So people like Cory, and I'm slightly astigmatic. I also don't really have full stereo vision. Anyway, I went through the process, and right at the point where I had to press a button that said $3,500, I said, no. Yeah.
So
no. I mean, I'm
only
with you, but-
3,500. Mine was 4.
And if you order, you can get more.
I ordered
more
lenses.
storage.
I got the 1 terabyte. I got the
$149 for the prescription lenses, $200 for the plastic case, the travel case.
I didn't get that.
Yeah,
I didn't see that.
There's a reason Apple makes $2 billion a year.
I feel like this is predatory almost. Yeah, and remember, and this is the other thing, that the timing is not great because Apple. As you may remember, last week in the Supreme Court declined to weigh in on Apple's appeal on the Epic decision. So Apple does have to open, it's not open their app store, but allow apps to
third-party payments
have a click in there that says, you want to buy a Kindle book? So right now, if you open the Kindle app and want to buy a book, Amazon says you can't buy it here, and that's all they're allowed to say.
Or they can take the money and a 30% hit, but the gross margin on that book is 20%, and
so they don't want to do that.
Money on it.
So they can give you a link, but wait, that's more. Wait, I'm not done. So Apple's now forced to provide Amazon and everybody else with the opportunity to click the button, go to their store. But Apple says, and by the way, we know we're watching, and you better pay us 27% commission on that transaction.
Google's doing the same thing, right?
Okay. But I can understand.
No. The duopoly. This is the hilarious thing about the idea that we have mobile competition is that generally in competitive markets, the firms involved don't all offer exactly the same thing. This is like Henry Ford saying you can have it in any color so long as it's black, and then Edsel coming along and saying you can also have it in any color with us so long as it's black. You see, the market is working.
Yeah.
The malicious compliance from Apple here really reminds me of the kind of stories I used to hear from my great aunt Lisa, who bossed an engineering shop in the Soviet Union, and all of her reports were surly drunks, and they would find the most imaginative ways to just like technically do what she ordered them to do without actually doing it. Apple's also thrown an interrupter in there so that when you click on it, you get the screen that says like, warning, fraud ahead. You might lose all your money. Don't click on this, but if you must, click on it. But we we wash our hands. Jamie Zawinski had a really good blog post where he went through the history of these, starting with NCSA Mosaic having an interrupter that said, you are visiting an outside website which may contain pornography.
So don't tempt me with a good time, but no, I mean but it's the same story with the Apple repair business. It's just like Apple was finally forced by public opinion to say, okay, you can repair your kit. Now, in order to do it, you've got to get these briefcases worth of kit. You've got to buy all the parts at a very high price. I mean, they are masters of this kind of shenanigans.
So they reformed that a little, and they replaced it with something called parts pairing, which they tried periodically before. Really, it came out of the automotive industry where it's called VIN locking. And this is where you have a little tiny cheap chip in each component, and it does a cryptographic handshake with the main CPU. And until it gets an unlock code, the CPU won't talk to it. And so, this is done with car engines and subcomponents and engines. It's done with tractors from John Deere. Medtronic does it with their ventilators. And Apple just went, basically the same week they announced that they were now supporting right to repair, rolled out a whole ton of new parts pairing, which caused iFixit to rescind their rating on the latest iPhone.
Now, Google did go to Oregon and say, we support the right to repair, and we are against part pairing. Yeah. That is where competition actually is working. Like, I don't think Google is made up of people who are nicer than Apple, right? I just think that like they looked at the incredibly good press Apple got when they climbed down from their right to repair stance, and then the incredibly bad press they got when it turned out that they were scamming, and they went, why don't we just do the first part and not the second part and see if we can't get some good press? Well, good luck, Google. It's not like they make the
Pixels.
The Pixel. Apple has a lot more to lose. Yeah. Here, by the way, thanks to JWZ, Jamie Zawinski, here are some of those interrupters. This is on the left where it's the current Apple one. You're about to go to an external website. Apple is not responsible for the privacy or security of purchases made on this web. And there's even more pros under this. He's got also MySpace's warning. And he's got, this one is from Mosaic, I think. NCSA's Mosaic, right? Beware, despite our best. Was this for any link in a browser? I think it must have been when you were clicking off of the Mosaic website.
I mean, it's hard to know what the context is. I just love that Jamie's got a hard drive full of this crap.
He saved it. Oh, yeah. In fact, he has previously.
And I don't even know if they need to. I mean, the reality is 99% of the people are not going to leave it, because if you have an iPhone and you have an Apple TV, you know better than to start buying apps that require you to go outside to pay for them, because the Apple TV is a disaster. I mean, it is a dumpster fire, because I get in there and now I gotta type in this code, and now I have to go over and I have to register with this Activate. It's a disaster, And so the thing is that as a user, my argument against all the reason I'm never going to go to something else, and if someone puts their app on outside thing or has me pay for it, I'm gonna be like, I don't need that. I don't need to have that app in my life, because I don't want to go over there, because I don't want to. I don't care about the percentage. I don't care about it charging me 30% more. I just don't want to deal with the time. To me, time is valuable. And Apple, for a lot of Apple users, time is more valuable than money. And so the thing is that it is we just don't want to deal with it. And I think that the Apple TV is a perfect example of what happens when you start to fragment the buying experience. I just want to go up and buy the app, pay for it there, and most importantly, I want to be able to kill the subscription anytime I want to. For whatever money we're saving as users for it to be on the outside, you save a lot more. Like when I buy an app, I sign up for a subscription, I wait a day, and then I cancel the subscription. And then it warns me, and it dies if I don't use it again. And I can't do that with anything else. And so as a user, I just don't think that. I think I get why we're doing this, but I don't think it serves the owner of the phone. I think is getting a worse experience.
So I have to respectfully disagree. So first of all, the way to get firms to stop ripping you off with subscriptions is for the Federal Trade Commission to do what it's just done, which is click to cancel orders. Yes. And then if they don't let you cancel with the same ease that you signed up, the Federal Trade Commission comes in and fines them thousands of times more than they're making from it. It's allowing firms.
I just don't know where it is. Like I have to dig through all my stuff.
Right, but that's also a violation of the click to cancel order. It has to be as easy.
But when
the cable companies, by the way, have responded to click to cancel, telling the FTC.
Some of those arguments this week have just been absolutely
if we make it that easy to cancel, our customers might cancel by accident.
Right. And I've watched all forms of sideloading in the mobile duopoly get much harder over the years, which is weird, right? So I loved the iPod. I was at that same iPod announcement that you were at, Iain, and I went out and bought one, the day I could. And I remember I just plugged it into my computer and everything synced over. And then whenever I had any new music on my computer, I'd double click it. It would show up in iTunes. The next time I plugged my iPod in, it would just work. As someone who sells media on the web that is sold outside of Apple's stores, because Apple refuses to sell audio that isn't locked to its platform forever with DRM and won't give authors the chance to unlock it. I've watched my users, like really sophisticated technical users, struggle with trying to move media from the web to their phones. Now, I don't believe that this is because it got harder as an intrinsic technical matter to sideload media. I think it's because the mobile duopoly gets 30 cents every time you spend $1 in their store and loses that 30 cents every time you spend that $1 on the web. And since they control that ecosystem, they've made it a lot harder. So by contrast, for example, I just set up a Chromecast. And again, I'm not a Google fanboy. I have written some of the most vitriolic prose about Google that has been published, I think. But I just set up a Chromecast and there were a bunch of streaming services we needed to set up for it. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to have to type my passwords into this? And it was like, just aim a phone at a QR code and click a button and the thing just recognized it. And so as a technical matter, I think interconnecting devices from heterogeneous vendors that want their customers to be able to access a service is possible. And I think that when we see burdensome connectivity, that our first suspicion should not be that this is intrinsically difficult, but rather that either someone's not good at their job or that an artificial barrier has been erected. And where there's a profit margin, right, where there's a very significant profit margin, remember that the payment processing cartel makes 3 to 5% on every payment. And that's considered a monopolistic price gouge. It's gone up 40% since the start of the pandemic. Apple, Google are charging 30%, right? That's 1,000% more than the monopoly rate. And when you see that the firms that control this, the most valuable companies in the history of the planet, are unable to somehow resolve an easy matter whereby you pay for something in one place and it shows up somewhere else, when they used to do that as a routine matter, then I think that like either their heart's not in it or they're pulling against it. I don't mean to sound like a conspiratorialist, but I refuse to believe that this is something Apple
it's a revenue thing. It's a revenue channel that they built. Like it's kind of like I built this train and everyone's like, I'd like to get on the train and not have to pay for it. Like the reason that it's there. Yeah,
it's more like you sold all these people Nikes and I'd like to sell them shoelaces. And they're like, no, once you buy the Nike shoes, you got to wear the Nike shoelaces. You got to wear the Nike socks. And we'd really strongly prefer if you only wore the Nike trousers.
I think Occam's razor suggests that this really is, monopolistic behavior. There's a lot of smart people at Google and Apple. They know that this stuff is a pain in the backside to use, and they're perfectly happy with that.
What about the argument, though, that 30% seems to be the standard VIG it is for
They set
Microsoft
the
and the
standard,
Xbox
though.
and the Xbox. Well, no, before Apple
they
was
didn't.
doing it.
Well,
Sony was doing it
consoles.
on the PlayStation. Microsoft is doing it on the Xbox.
Consoles have been 30% since forever. Like
Right.
it is, like that has been the number, and that's where they took it. That's where the number came from, not from Apple
Okay.
or Google.
That doesn't
No,
mean
I'm
it's
not
not
from consoles.
anti-competitive. I should point out.
Well,
It's
but we should probably take that one down first.
We can walk and chew gum. We can do both.
Yeah, but you'll never. The problem is that they build the platform, they support the platform, they develop the platform. They as someone who has sold a lot of software for the last 25 years, and I'm about to sell another one into the App Store in the next 6 months or
Vision
so.
on the Vision Pro or
No. It's just this little program here. You draw on things.
okay.
Anyway, so the as I look at it, I used to sell a keying software for Final Cut, and we used to put it up. Looking at the Where's sites, we were pretty sure that the number that we sold versus the number that were being used was about 50 to 1. So that was, and trying to, as a small developer, trying to go after those folks was just going to be impossible. It was just going to be like, I'm not going to go down that path. And it was just a really, for me, when I look at the idea that there's a platform that solves the install, that solves the security, that solves the updates, that solves all those other things, as a developer, knowing that I'll never make more than $1 million, we have to remember that
Nobody's
98%
suggesting
of
that
the developers
shouldn't exist.
No,
They're
I'm
just
saying I
saying
don't
there
have
should
any
be a
complaint.
choice. There should be a choice.
but-
If you
but
want
what
to
I'm
do
saying
it
is-
that way, you should do it that way.
But let's
as a
look
developer.
at the numbers. The number of developers being affected by 30%, and we keep on throwing around 30%.
Yeah, but look
is
at
best
the Macintosh
60,000
platform. By the way,
out
there are a
of-
lot of
out of 3
developers
million.
very concerned that Apple is about to do this on the Mac platform. I don't think they are. I hope they're not.
No, they're not going to do that.
But this exact scenario that you describe exists on the Mac, where you can have as a independent developer, put your site up, have an app on your site, sell it directly. Apple
And I
does
would
not
never
take a
consider doing
percentage.
that.
Well, that's
I
what I'm
would never do
saying.
that.
You have a choice,
Dumb.
or you could do it in the App Store.
I'm not stupid.
Okay, you say dumb, but there are a lot of companies that are
for big
dumb enough
companies that
to
wanna
do
do
that,
it.
and they
But-
keep
but-
100% of the revenue. And if they
Yeah.
want to
Before
do
the
that, they should have the choice.
Before the Berlin Wall came down, they used to insist that the wall was there to stop people from West Germany sneaking in. And when Apple says that the only reason we don't permit people to choose another, like to sideload, is because we don't think our developers or customers want that. Like Apple wouldn't have spent like tens of millions of dollars and its best PR efforts fighting sideloading if this was a thing that everyone genuinely preferred, or if they genuinely believed that this was a thing everyone genuinely
wouldn't have to.
preferred.
Yeah.
Well, no, but to argue that case just for 1 second is that what I'm as a pretty hardened Apple user, I have a couple PCs over here and a couple Unix machines over here, but generally I'm a Mac environment, and Apple TV is my only interface, and I've had every iPhone that was released, and I have Apple Watches and all the other things, right? What I'm concerned about as a user is companies taking away my choice. So Netflix saying, I'm only going to let you have it if you sideload it. Like I'm no longer going to make it available to you. So as a user, I get forced into a sideload that I don't want to do.
It works fine on the Mac, though. I don't understand why it wouldn't work on iOS. Why is it different?
Because right now the iOS is very secure and very closed down, and I can manage all the payments, and I can do all the things that I want to do. I don't want to sideload, and I don't want to be forced to sideload. And for the Mac, on the Mac, I buy apps that are generally high-end apps that are, $300 or more that I'll buy site. If you have a little app under $100, there is zero chance that I'm going to be it.
But you have the choice. That's the point. Is you can have an app store, and you can have an open ecosystem at the same time.
It is, but what people will be what right now the user doesn't have to make that choice. Right now, the user is in a little
make that
cozy
choice.
garden. Okay. If you think that more than 1% of Apple users
do on the Mac all the time,
and
if they were to do this, you even said if they were to do this on the Mac, it would be the end of the Mac platform.
They don't care. They don't care. Apple users don't care about this. And the thing is as soon as really, real people, not us in the geeky world or whatever, but real people barely even know this exists, let alone care about it.
Well, you might be right.
Because we're in the tech. They don't care. They don't even know it's here, And the thing is that what they will know is when Netflix suddenly requires them to go into a side load, or Facebook requires them because Facebook wants to build its own store, or Epic. Then they're going to be upset, and then it's too late. Like it's already out the door. And then you're going to have, people are going to be upset after it happens, not before it happens. Right now they don't know, and they're going to be, and people will, and Facebook is going to do that. They're not going to want to keep on developing. If they're allowed to go on the other side, they're going to want to put everything over there because they want to manage their own marketplace.
The problem is that Apple, it works well when it's making good choices on your behalf, but because when it makes a bad choice on your behalf, you can't overrule that choice. It fails very badly. So thinking here of something like the OG app, which was an app that used WebKit to get you to log into Instagram, grab the token, and then gave you an Instagram feed where they removed all of the ads, all of the surveillance. So no telemetry was sent to Meta, and only showed you things, and all the suggestions, and only showed you things from people who you had subscribed to, which was wildly popular, and which Apple took out of the App Store, citing Section 522 of their developer agreement, saying that you may not have an app that violates anyone else's terms of service. Right? So the terms of service, if you ever read the terms of service on any app you've ever used or any service you've ever used, it basically says, abandon hope, all ye who enter here. So what you have is Apple showing up and putting its thumb on the scales for allowing Facebook to spy on you. Now, when Apple was stopping Facebook from spying on you by giving you a one-click opt-out, which, by the way, violated Facebook's terms of service, and very rightfully, Apple told Facebook to pound sand, that was great, and that worked well. But because Apple is not disciplined by the fear of users figuring out how to install a third-party app store, they are also willing to run roughshod over what you do. Those self-help measures are a powerful force of discipline on tech firms, right? In a world in which, say, ad blockers could be installed, every time someone in a product development meeting says, hey, let's make the ads 25% more obnoxious and we'll get 2% more revenue per user, someone else might say, but look, 25% of our users are going to type, how do I install an ad blocker when you put that in? And our expected revenue from those users falls to zero forever. Now, half the web has installed an ad blocker. 0 app users have installed an ad blocker because installing an ad blocker in an app requires decompiling the app, which is a felony under Section 1201 of the DMCA. So you can think of an app as just a web page that pays a 30% commission wrapped in enough IP that it's a felony to put an ad blocker in it. And the fact that when devs try to actually intercede on behalf of users to block the negative conduct of some of the most harmful companies in the world, Apple helps those companies, right? It tells you that Apple itself cannot be the sole arbiter of what's in our interest. They can be an arbiter of what's in our interest, but if we don't get to override their choices, then they will not use that authority wisely.
No, I agree. I mean, you mentioned this at DEF CON in your speech, where it's basically an app is basically access to a web page with a bunch of IP thrown in there to make sure that you don't do anything that you isn't wanted at the time. Mm-hmm. And that's a tremendously dangerous situation. I mean, we're supposed to be individual users of these devices. And yes, it might be a slight pain to sideload stuff, but it's certainly a right that must be protected.
I love Brent Simmons' take on this. He's a longtime Apple developer. I think he was the one who came up with a pull to refresh. He did Net Newswire in his blog in essential.com. Corporations are not to be loved. I need to remember now and again that Apple is a corporation. Corporations aren't people. They can't love you back. You wouldn't love GE or Exxon or Comcast, and you shouldn't love Apple. It doesn't care about you personally in the least tiny bit. And if you were in their way somehow, and I have to think Brent might have some personal experience here, they would do whatever their might, effectively infinite compared to your own, enables them to deal with you. Apple has, he says, luckily Apple has just provided us all with a reminder. Just like the sixth finger in an AI-rendered hand, Apple's policies for distributing apps in the U.S. that provide an external purchase link are startlingly graceless and jarring, but not surprising. Reminder, Apple is not a real person and not worthy of your love. It's hard for, I think, and I'll include myself in the cult of Mac. Those of us, and you were early on a cult of Mac member, Cory. I know you've moved on.
I have an Apple tattoo.
Yeah. You do? Really?
My only tattoo. I have a sad Mac with a hexadecimal error code.
Oh, that's great. Where is that, by the way? Inner thigh?
On my right bicep, where it's turned into a kind of smudge because I got it like 28 pixels square. I dumped the ROMs on an SE and then laser printed it and brought it to a tattoo artist. And he was like, "This is going to smudge." And I'm like, "No, I'll be careful." And now it's just a...
But that's a beautiful story. So at the time, you clearly were a fan.
I think that as with my relationship with Disney theme parks, it is quite possible to love the sin and hate the sinner. That you don't have to excuse all of the bad things that someone does or a firm does just because they've made things that you enjoy and that make your life better. It's, you can give them some grace, but you don't have to be blind to their bad actions. And I think that so much of the kind of painful stuff that we get into when someone or some firm that has done something that we like disappoints us arises out of this weird idea that all ethical conduct sits in this balance scale. And if all the bad things that someone's done are worse than all the good things that someone's done, all the good things are wiped away. And if all the good things are better than all the bad things that someone's done, then all the bad things are irrelevant. And instead, we can just have those exist in superposition. We can say when Apple has its customers' backs, right? When Apple is kicking Facebook spying out of iOS, when Apple is fighting the FBI on surveillance in encrypted messaging, Apple is doing good, and Apple's conduct and the products that arise from that conduct are good. And then when Apple is removing all working privacy tools from the Chinese App Store, or when Apple secretly turns on its own ad-based surveillance on iOS platform after kicking Facebook out, then Apple is bad and doing bad. And we don't have to say Apple is a bad company for having done bad, nor do we have to say Apple is a good company for having done good. What we have to say is, what are the forces that discipline Apple so that on balance its conduct is good? And what are the policies that create a regime in which when Apple does bad, we are not forced to take those bad decisions on, but rather can make another choice, which is why things like sideloading and third-party app stores are good, not because necessarily anyone that you know will use them, but because the possibility that someone will use them might discipline Apple into conducting itself better in the operation of its own app store. And should Apple's hubris outweigh its self-defense or its self-preservation instinct, then you'll have a remedy, right? You can go somewhere else. If it ever gets bad enough, you can go somewhere else.
Yeah, this debate, hold on, we're going to stop now. This debate will continue, though, on MacBreak Weekly. It is a
good quote coming up, but still, okay.
It is an ongoing conversation that we have on MacBreak Weekly. And Alex's position is I think, well known and well executed. It's nice to have Cory.
I just want to say 10 seconds.
Sure.
Yeah. It's not that I think Apple does everything right. I hate the Apple TV at this point, like the iOS or the tvOS. I complain about it all the time. It's not that I think Apple does better. I just measure it against everything else, including the United States government, and choose Apple over almost all of those other things because their business model selfishly is user-centric, as far as not developer-centric and not government-centric, but user-centric. and that's their business model. I don't claim that they're good. I'm only saying that their business model is to keep folks like us happy, and
be aware that offer does not apply in China. I mean, it's kind of, I see those Apple is right for privacy stuff. Like as long as you're not in the Middle Kingdom.
Talk about not getting to choose. Like, there's a lot of things I don't like about California, but I've chosen to live here. And there's a ton of things that I think are crappy about this state, but I'm here, and I don't. I'm like, and this is where I live, and I'm not going anywhere. You always have to take all those pieces together as a whole.
Humans are such a tribal species, and it's how we've kind of organized our lives and survived and succeeded so long. It's hard not to be tribal, and one of the attributes of tribalism is my side is right and your side is wrong, always and forever. And tribalism doesn't really solve this problem at all. And while I do not have an Apple tattoo, I do have a TWiT tattoo. And it hasn't smudged.
Really?
Yet.
Where do you have that?
It's a long story. Let's put it this way. It was New Year's Eve. I came home the next morning with my head shaved and a tattoo on my ass. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know.
I thought you were going to say that most of the time it says Twit, but at very special moments it says Twitter, the company, came after Twit, the network.
we used to have to have a paragraph because we'd call people, say I'm from Twit, and they say, you mean Twitter? And we had a whole paragraph where we say, no, Twit predates Twitter. It's a network, podcast network, not a. Anyway, fortunately, I don't have to do that anymore because Twitter is the company formerly known as Twitter. But as long as we're in I want to take a break. We need to take a break, but I do. As long as we're in the annals of companies behaving badly, you saw that Verizon has agreed to settle a class action lawsuit of $100 million.
That is the craziest one ever. I read that. I was like, what are they doing? Like they are agreeing to make a payment, but they're not agreeing to stop the behavior. And if you look at what they're willing to pay people, they're actually making a profit. We're talking about 30%. They're making 60%.
This is a so-called telco recovery fee, which the class action lawsuit asserted is nothing but just more profit for Verizon. Verizon admitted no wrongdoing, but did settle for $100 million and then said, oh, and by the way, we're going to continue to charge the fee.
But this is the problem when it comes to regulation in this country. And this is something that the Reg has been pioneering. When a fine or a settlement like this is announced, you don't just say it's 100 million. You say this is 0.2% of their net profit for the last year. This is a cost of business, cost for them. This isn't a fine. This isn't a deterrent in any way.
They also agreed,
cost of doing business.
They also agreed to amend their My Verizon Wireless customer agreement to include this explanation of the charges, which range, by the way, it's a few bucks per bill, but it's on every month. And it doesn't do anything except give them money in their pocket. In addition to the cost of your plan, Verizon writes, or any features to which you may subscribe, our charges may also include an administrative and telco recovery charge. The administrative and telco recovery charge isn't a tax. It isn't required by law. It's not necessarily related to anything the government does and is kept by us in whole or in part.
And the funny thing is that,
but nobody will ever read that. And
the settlement pays you $1 a month for all the months that you had it.
Right.
But you're paying $3 a month.
Right. You don't get your money back.
They can do the settlement every 5 years. The lawyers will take 40 million. The lawyers get 40 million. Verizon makes a profit, and you get a little bit of a rebate back. But that's exactly what this is. Watch this happen in 5 years from now. It's like it's like an $8 million a year deal for this law firm to just say, we're just going to keep settling every 5 years. Yeah. We'll take some money, we'll send some back to everybody, and we'll get a little bit of press, and it'll move on.
Verizon pays a third back.
There's a phrase from the law and political economy movement here, which is that a fine is a price. And this is the issue with rather than prohibiting conduct, fining people for the conduct, and it's also the problem with certain kinds of consent-based regimes or notification-based regimes, right? By as I said before, when we were talking about Apple's developer TOS section 522, and you may not violate anyone else's TOS. That the fact that the TOS says, by being dumb enough to use our product, you agree that we're allowed to come to your house and punch your grandmother and wear your underwear and make long distance calls and eat all the food in your fridge, doesn't actually should not constitute consent. And the outer periphery of what you can consent to without being able to negotiate should be much more tightly constrained, right? The idea that we should have a higher threshold for what in contract law is called unconscionability, a clause that can't be enforced because it shocks the conscience, should be much higher in these contracts of adhesion, click-through contracts where you don't get a say. Otherwise, you just have this thing where you say, okay, well, you're not allowed to do this. And they say, great, well, from now on, we'll just tell people we're doing it. And either it gets buried in the fine print or you see it in the fine print and you're like, but I still need the thing, right? Back to the point Alex was making.
Well, they're clever. They keep it just low enough so that you go, well, it's a couple of bucks a month. What is the...
And really the question is, once you get it, if it became a regulation rather than a settlement, which is probably why they're keeping it as a settlement, is once you do a regulation, you keep on doing it, then that becomes, that starts to, lots of small crimes that add up to a big crime is RICO. And that's,
I want to channel Ken White here and say, it's probably not RICO.
I know, but...
Wow. All right. Well, let's take a break. Got a great panel. Lots to discuss. I love it when a panel does not necessarily see eye to eye, and I think we got three smart people who argue the case well. Cory Doctorow is here. His new book, The Bezel, is on Kickstarter. If you want to support the audio edition with the wonderful Will Wheaton. I loved the first Martin Ensh book. I can't wait to read The Bezel. This is great.
Oh, thank you, Leo.
This is great, yeah. And, I'll be fair. You say Amazon won't sell it, but let's be fair. The reason Amazon won't sell it is because you won't put DRM on it. So
yeah, sure, right. But that's like saying Amazon also won't sell books that, for a while anyway, they wouldn't sell books that had links to sites other than Amazon in them. And,
right.
The answer might be, well, you could just write a book that didn't have those requirements and Amazon would sell it. Sure. Okay. If I allowed Amazon to log every book that I sold to Amazon's platform forever, Section 12.1 of the DMCA provides for a $500,000 fine and a 5-year prison sentence for removing DRM, which means that if I, as the author of the book and the person who financed the audiobook, were to provide you, the person who bought the book from Audible, with a tool so you can move it out of Audible's app and play it in another app, not only would that be punishable by a stiffer penalty than you just pirating the book from some torrent site, it's a much higher penalty than you'd pay if you shoplifted the book on a CD from like a truck stop. And it's even probably harsher than the penalty you would pay if you stuck up the truck that delivered the CD with a gun and stole it. Right? And the fact that Amazon says, well, all you have to do is consent to this term where it's we get to send you to prison for 5 years if you help your listeners listen to a book that you made with someone else's app.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Amazon will sell my books if I agree to that. I won't agree to that, but I think that, that's a reasonable thing to not agree to.
I agree. Kickstarter, search for The Bezel. You'll find it pretty quickly. What is a bezel?
So a bezel is John Kenneth Galbraith's term for the magic interval after the con artist has your money, but before you know it's a con, when both of you feel like you're better off.
We both won. Yay.
It's like the net increase of happiness in the world is up. So think about, how everybody felt about NFTs before the NFTs crashed, right? That was the bezel, right? How everyone feels about, the metaverse before the metaverse crashes, how everyone feels about, all the AI exuberance before, 98% of the AI companies pull the plug on their very expensive to run servers, and all the integration you've done with AI tools goes away.
So what you're saying
overnight.
is if you're happy right now, you're probably in the bezel.
No, but I think that, so you're getting into enshittification here.
Yes, and we will. That's your next book, and we will definitely talk about that.
That is my next book. I just sent off the proposal. So
I'm so excited.
I don't think it's inevitable that companies abuse their customers. Like I was saying about Apple, I've been the beneficiary of many instances in which Apple did the right thing for their customers, and I am more interested in how we discipline Apple and other companies by making it so that the costs that they bear for failing to have their customers back is higher than the expected return. And so that when they fail to take that calculus seriously, we can go somewhere else than I am with like trying to, create a moral hierarchy of which $1 trillion companies are good $1 trillion companies and which $1 trillion companies are bad $1 trillion companies.
That's important. That's really an important, I think, contextualization. That there's good and there's bad. That doesn't let anybody off the hook. You're not weighing your soul against the weight of a feather. It is more complicated.
Right. I have a short story in the final Dangerous Visions anthology that Harlan Ellison's literary executor Joe Straczynski is putting out about Harlan Ellison in purgatory, because Harlan did some wonderful things.
He was a perfect example, isn't he? Yeah.
And it's called The Weight of a Heart, The Weight of a Feather.
So there's going to be the third Dangerous Visions compilation.
Joe Straczynski has bought the book, and it's coming from Blackwell.
And that's one of the great lost pieces of science fiction. Because I did Ellison's obituary actually in a bar in San Francisco, and it did include the subhead Napoleon complex or short arsehole. But at the same time, he was a fantastic writer. I'm so glad this is coming back,
and I'm going to take
also
this
a wonderful friend.
Oh, really?
Right?
You knew Harlan Ellison?
But he wasn't my friend.
Oh,
He
okay.
was the friend of many of my friends, but he was gratuitously rotten to me. He was also my teacher, and he was quite bad as a teacher. But I watched him do a thing that he was infamous for, which is to choose a goat and choose an angel in the class. I was neither of them, for the record, and shower one with praise and reduce the other to tears, just seemingly to show that he could do it. But the stories of the way that he was a generous, kind, and thoughtful friend to other people are not made up, and they are not canceled out by the stories of the ways in which he harmed other people. They are, just as I say, in superposition. Yeah. And, the idea that we can wipe the books clean of all the good Harlan did because of all the terrible things he did is no more valid than the idea that we should ignore all the terrible things he did because he was so good and kind so many times. They just have to both be. We're
not very good as humans in living in paradox, but the more I learn about life, the more I realize that's what we live in. And we want it to be black and white, and it isn't. It is not black and white ever, in any case.
Never is going to be.
And that's the wonderful Iain Thomson from the Register. Always a pleasure to have you. We've got
always fun to be on.
Three, I want to say, intellectuals on. We got smart people on. Alex Lindsay from officehours.global, 090 Media, and of course, MacBreak Weekly. Our show today brought to you by Mint Mobile. We like to highlight companies that are doing things in a better way, that are perhaps tending towards the good side, because we want you to know about it so you can enjoy them and live a better life. Mint Mobile ditched retail stores and their overhead costs and instead sells their phone plans online, passes these savings on to you. And I tell everybody about it because it's a remarkable deal. You are definitely overpaying for your mobile service if you're not using Mint Mobile. Now, for a limited time, they're passing on even better savings with a new customer offer that cuts all Mint Mobile plans, all of them, to $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. Every Mint Mobile plan comes with unlimited nationwide talk and text and data on the nation's largest 5G network, T-Mobile. And the data, $15 a month for the whole kit and caboodle. I think this is an amazing deal. You can bring your own phone. It's very easy to port the number over. Mint Mobile will send you the SIM for free, unlike other companies. They don't charge you for that. Or use eSIM for instantaneous activation. Or you can buy a phone from them. In fact, I bought a beautiful iPhone SE for them for $15 a month. $15 a month for the phone, $15 a month for the service. You're still about a third what you're paying for the other guys. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's limited time deal and get premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer, you have to be a new customer. And your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/twit. This is a great way to see if Mint Mobile works for you. mintmobile.com/twit. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/twit. I've moved so many people, family members, in fact, over to Mint Mobile. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. mintmobile.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support. You put this video up, Alex Lindsay, from the World Economic Forum, which just concluded in Davos. The new president of Argentina, Javier Milei, his special address. Now, the things he said were a little unpleasant, so I'm not talking about what he said. Let me play the normal video of this. This is from the translator, simultaneous translation as he's speaking.
But this concept, which in the developed world became fashionable in recent times.
So you can hear in the background, you can hear his Spanish, and you can hear an English accented, British accented translator translating it.
My country has been a constant in political discourse
in real time.
80 years. The problem is.
So really, it's just a kind of getting all the words out there. But you demonstrated, you show us something which is very interesting. This is a YouTube video with the English speech rendered by HeyGen.ai. Just tell me what's happening here, Alex.
So what's happening here is this is a deep fake that is taking his Spanish, converting it to English, and then also reforming his mouth. Now, this is all
it looks very similar. I mean, it's a deep fake. There's the original, and here's
video.
Yeah.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, so we've been doing, this has been finding its way into visual effects for a while. So we have to, like, someone swears and we have to make the TV version. Someone does this, whatever. And so inserting these things into it has been something that our companies have been doing for the last couple of years. It's not completely unknown, but it's not brand new either. But I had not seen it in this environment. And I will admit, this is an environment that I live in. So I know a lot about it. I've done hundreds of events with 6 to 15 languages. We have this stuff going out, and there is such a loss of energy, and we talk about it all the time. A loss of energy for the speaker that happens when you have a translation. When they have to speak in their own language, a lot of them will attempt to speak in English because it gives them a greater impact around the world
you
to
see
speak in English. But then it's broken.
Zelensky doing that, but it's broken English, and it loses impact for that.
I mean, we have a school in Rwanda, and so our students stream most of the government events and so on and so forth there. And so President Kagame is in a completely different person in Rwanda than he is in English.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And what he says,
I would be a completely different person as well, right? In his life.
And so because we're trying to find the other language and say the words in the best way we can. In this case, you're allowing that person, and again, I think people will be scared about this, but I think this is a great thing for the people who are actually saying it, assuming that it's accurate. We have to remember that almost all translation is not accurate. We're still arguing over what the Bible said. So
the AI is also doing the translation as well as the deep fake.
This is to my knowledge. This is my knowledge of it, and this is the process. It's probably not in real time. It is, I'm going to changing from one language to another is something large language models do really well, probably better than human beings most of the time. Then the second piece is building a voice model, and these guys are doing it. Probably the leader in this right now is 11 Labs. They are just
my AI Leo voice is from 11 Labs.
Frightening. Yeah. I know some folks that are like that. They're doing their interviews when it, like, they type it out and just send it to somebody.
It's pretty wild.
Like, I don't want to. And so 11 Labs is kind of nailing that process. But this one is. So, but then the hardest part is this idea of, I'm going to change the mouth movement. So I'm going to move. But we can do it, and we've been doing it in visual effects for the last couple of years, where you're basically rebuilding that model. Now, in visual effects, the impact is all those dubs that you see. Eventually, we'll use this for movies, for the releases, so you don't have any kind of lack of sync with the person talking. But I think that this really benefits, and when it becomes real time, which is probably going to be a while. This is probably 100x, 1 to 100. So it probably takes a long time to render. But when it happens, it means that the individual speaking about what they care about, whether it's what he cares about or what Zelensky cares about, speaking in their own language, coming in English or French or whatever language it needs to go out to, is a huge value for that speaker to increase the impact of what they're saying. Because right now everybody's crippled by translation. Like the interpretation in this case. Everybody gets crippled by interpretation because the interpreters, they have bad mics. They're always kind of droning on. They're not any more accurate than the large language model, in my opinion. And so it's just really frustrating. You always go, there's got to be a better way to do this. And this is the best. I was just kind of.
So let me show you again the actual speech. Milei is talking to Davos.
Either to the general well-being. Quite on the contrary.
And you hear
it's an intrinsically unfair idea because it's violent. It's unjust because the state is...
Actually, I think the simultaneous translator is doing a decent job of getting the intonation in there. This is the deep fake.
And does so increasingly faster, but is also fair and morally superior. Thanks to capitalism, the world is currently in its best moment. There has never been a moment in history. It sounds like his voice, by the way. I should say, if you've heard Milei's voice, than the one we live in today.
The mouth movements are perfect.
Today's world is freer, richer, more peaceful.
I think it looks a little funny every once in a while, but
if you didn't know ahead of time to look for it.
This is true for everyone, but particularly for those countries that are free.
That's the scary part, right?
Where they respect economic
freedom. And that's the deep fake concern, is that you could put this in the mouth of Benjamin Netanyahu.
There's everything, as Cory so succinctly said earlier, everything comes with good and bad. So the good side of this is allowing people to speak to the whole world in their native language. I can speak in my native language. It goes out to them in their native language. It is a head and shoulder ability to communicate in a much more powerful way. And we're eliminating it's like Star Trek. No one thinks about language.
I saw
the downside of it is people will put
4 years ago.
Mouths.
They had fake people, but they were based on real people. So these are presenters that look very real. Apparently, though, they can do it with real people as a deep fake, which is interesting. And these are simulated presenters, right? You choose the presenter you want, the language you want them to speak in. It's kind of amazing.
I do worry, though, because we're in 2024 is going to be a major election year. We've got presidential elections in the US, we've got a general election in the UK, and this kind of technology is really coming of age, as it were. I suspect we're going to see some really interesting examples this year of completely fake scandals coming through.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I have more faith in people's ability to detect these, or at least to be suspicious of them. I think generally what happens is people believe what they want to believe, and they look for things to reinforce their beliefs. I don't think people's minds are changed by these things. Is that hopelessly naive of me?
Maybe. Like I think there's a lot of. we just have to remember that not everyone is above average, and so the thing is that we always have to take it easily pushed around.
This discussion often feels that almost patronizing to me, like, well, you can't trust real people to know the difference.
No, I don't mean real people, but I mean I just have to. You have to have if it builds into their own narrative that they already look at the world, they tend to latch onto it, and it doesn't matter how smart. In fact, sometimes they're smart enough to
a lot of
calculate it all and figure it all out.
Obviously fake.
Agreed.
I mean, if you see Donald Trump with a physique that would rival, Superman, that's fake. And people who embrace it and put it on their trucks or raise it up on the flag know that it's fake, but that doesn't matter because it says something to them that is a truth, a deeper truth.
But part of the challenge is that we're lying to people all the time. So how do we know what is true? Our government
there is
will tell
a risk
us all these things that they're not doing, and then they are.
Yeah.
There's there's a lot of things that the government will tell us over and over and over again, and then after a while they're like, well, it wasn't exactly that way.
Is this a form of enshittification,
so then we don't know.
Corey? No, I guess this is different.
I mean, look, I was telling the joke before we started that I'm okay with people using enshittification colloquially however they want. We speak English. It doesn't have a language academy. Go ahead. I made up this word. I don't get to have the final say about how people use it.
I didn't even know that Cory made it up. I use it all the time.
Good.
I'm glad that I have the origin now.
As a journalist, I love it, but I just dread seeing it in the headline because I know that everyone's going to be like, how dare they be putting out about
this is one of the reasons I think it's successful is that it's anyway, that's a separate point. But I think that both Leo and Alex, you hit on something really important there, which is that it's often the case that we already have both norms and rules against the kinds of uses of deepfake technology that we're worried about. So, for example, there are pretty strict rules about election interference that apply irrespective of whether you're doing it with a computer or not. Thankfully, unlike, say, in privacy, where we have somehow decided that you can violate the law so long as you do it with an app, we have not gotten there with election interference. We do take that seriously. There are pretty stiff penalties. I was just on a panel right after the George Carlin, bad George Carlin.
Oh, my God, was that awful?
And his family were very upset, and I understand, but, we have personality rights in places where that would apply. And we have also had impersonators for a really long time. And the fact that the impersonation is easier and faster has some changes at the margin, but it's a change in degree and not a change in kind. And, we already have rules about when an impersonator crosses a line and when they don't. Elvis is obviously dead, supposedly. But if an Elvis impersonator were to
guy
try
who lives down my chip shop who's...
That was sneaky of you there, Cory. Okay,
but if an Elvis impersonator were to try to, access the Elvis Presley estate.
Yeah, we'd know.
Right? And draw the money out of it. We would know what the cause of action was.
Yeah.
And in the UK, every year there's a season on Radio 4 where Dead Ringers impersonates political people. It's not election interference. There is no intention to fool someone. If someone is fooled, there is not a crime that's been committed, and probably the people who make the show will, having fooled someone, make a point of letting it be known that they weren't intending to fool you and try and set the record straight. So there are some genuinely novel, scary things about AI and deepfakes and so on. But a really large numbers of the ones that people come up with really seem like they're part and parcel of the whole kind of weird thing that AI bros do, where they hold a flashlight under their chin and say, AI, like the spicy autocomplete is going to turn us into paper clips. In the future, no one will know what's true. And I think that, it's possible to like cleave the silliness from the real issues. And there's some real issues. I'm a science fiction writer. I love digging into those without kind of just creating a situation which you can sound profound by rubbing your chin and saying, well, what about after AI comes to this?
Well, even worse, I think a lot of AI executives are using this to hype their products.
Sure.
Famously, Sam Altman talking to Ina Fried, I think this was also at Davos, said ChatGPT will have to evolve in uncomfortable ways. And it gives you the veneer of, oh, I care, I'm really paying attention to this and we really care. But really what it's all about is saying, see how brilliant our AI is. It could even be uncomfortable. Ha
The scholar Lee Vinsel at Virginia Tech has a really useful term for this. He calls it crita hype, like criticism.
Crita hype. I love it.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and he, I think, coined it mostly to talk about tech bros who worked for surveillance advertising companies making claims about having built mind control arrays, which,
or Cox Media Group saying we can listen to every device in your house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's like, right? You can criticize these companies on the one hand for wanting to build a mind control array. Like wanting to build a mind control array objectively makes you a very bad person, right? But you don't have to believe that they've built the mind control array, especially when there are like these much more parsimonious explanations for what's going on. Like maybe the reason you're getting so much money for your ads is that ad tech is a duopoly. And you guys have this secret program called Jedi Blue, where Google and Facebook illegally collude to rig the ad market. And maybe that's why the ad market is so lucrative, and not because you figured out how to make Grampy into a QAnon.
Yeah, I think that it's not so much that. I guess when I look at it, I'm a big fan of AI. I mean, like pretty much all I cook are AI recipes now. I ask ChatGPT, like I'm like, you are the key with ChatGPT is you tell it where it's coming from, what you want, and then the output, and say, you are a Michelin chef, make me a tomato, give me a recipe for a tomato soup, and it'll give me, I just made it. It's great. Anyway, and I use Midjourney all day, so like these are ChatGPT. My wife, who is not necessarily high tech, she just pulls out ChatGPT on her phone all the time. Like just asks the questions and does, and so I think that it is part of our life and it's going to make a lot of things better. At the same time, I do think we have to know that, to err is human, but to really screw things up requires a computer. And
yep.
and
yes,
the
my favorite phrases.
It's the mass of production that can be done. And I look at it. There was something that I wanted to do for a long time. And I was talking, CJ is a friend of mine. He uses Resolve. And I said, here's what I want to do. I want you to look at a movie. I want you to cut all of the scenes, every camera angle. And then I want the frame in the middle of that camera angle so that we can look at color, And I was like, I've been asking Black Magic for this for, I don't know, a decade of like, add this thing because it lets us analyze movies. And he wrote it. And it's a little script that works inside of Black Magic, and it just sends you a poster, literally. And he's like, do you want 30 rows wide or 40 rows wide? So I said, how long have you been programming? He goes, oh, I've never programmed at all. And I was like, what? And he goes, no, I did the whole thing in ChatGPT. Yeah. He goes, I pointed ChatGPT towards the scripting language and opened it up and just told it what I wanted, and then just keep on. And then I did a couple little things to correct here and there. And I would have it look at the code, and it goes, but I've never programmed at all.
Wow.
I was just like, oh.
I don't think in general, by the way, that's going to be an effective tool. Although I've talked to a lot of AI people who saying, yeah, writing code is dead.
It's writing prompts, I don't think.
But I think
it's good for.
It was the first time Stack Overflow banned ChatGPT 3
because it's a huge threat to them.
Side because huge numbers of errors. Now, I mean,
well, I think more because it's a threat to them because people won't go to Stack Overflow anymore. They're going to go to ChatGPT and do the same query. I created an expert GPT in my language of choice, which is Common Lisp, and it will write code, but I will never. I guess I could, but cut and paste the code. But it is very useful for me as a reference that I can use as I code. And by the way, one of the things I did, which I think is important, I don't know if Copilot does this or not, but I suspect they do, is I said, please don't. I don't want hallucinations. Only come up with an answer that you can get from the corpus of materials. I gave them all sorts of Lisp books and stuff. That's why it works well with Common Lisp, because it's so old. There's a lot of stuff in public domain. And it's quite good. And I asked it this morning. I forgot that I was still in the expert instead of in the regular chat GPT. And I asked it a question during Ask the Tech Guys. I said, I don't know anything about that. If you have a question about Common Lisp, I'll be glad to answer it, which made me very happy. It isn't going to hallucinate. I think there are uses right now for AI, I guess like coding, but certainly for expert systems or coding assists. Just like someday we'll be able to take our hands off the wheel and read a book while a car drives. But for right now, the smart thing to do would be keep your hands on the wheel and work together with the AI as it drives.
But I mean, you mentioned hallucination, and this is something which is kind of a hot button for me, because obviously when all this stuff came out, as a journalist, your first thought is, right, let's check it out. Can we actually write articles? Can we automate things like financial results stories or outage reports and that sort of thing?
Or sporting stories.
Yeah, we tried it out, and the amount of time you have to spend editing to get rid of these hallucinations.
Well, that was your mistake.
Well, no, but hallucination is just a really nice
Sports
way of
Illustrated
saying
said, just put that up.
Wrong.
Just put that up. We don't care. It doesn't matter.
What's happened to Sports Illustrated has been very strange this week. And I mean, as a Brit, I didn't really quite understand the cultural significance of swimsuit issue.
Huge.
But the amount of people screaming about it online.
Huge. So just for those who don't know, mass layoffs at Sports Illustrated. It had a very weird economic pinning. The name Sports Illustrated and the rights to Sports Illustrated was owned by one company, which had purchased it from Time Inc. many years ago, but then licensed to another company which was responsible for editorial content and publishing the magazine, the Arena Group. So the company that owns the Sports Illustrated name and rights, which apparently only was interested in things like building Sports Illustrated hotels, Authentics Brand Group. They're a licensing company. Yeah, there was going to be a Sports Illustrated hotel. So the sad tale of this is, and it's pretty much the same tale about all media empires from years gone by. Meredith, big magazine publisher, bought Time Inc. for $3 billion in 2017. A couple of years later, they started to sell it off for parts. Sports Illustrated was sold to this Authentic Brands Group, which is a licensing company that acquires the rights to celebrity brands. They bought it for $110 million. Mostly for the name, so they could have a Sports Illustrated hotel. And then they asked this Arena Group, which owns Men's Journal, Parade, The Street, for 10 years. They did a 10-year deal that you will publish and operate Sports Illustrated. It paid about according to the New York Times, $45 million for the rights to do so. Well, Arena Group has been running into trouble and has basically laid off almost all of the staff, including some of the most famous names in sport writing. They also got in trouble for having an AI write some of their articles. In fact, the CEO lost his job over that. Right now, Arena Group. So they had a 7-minute Zoom call on Friday with the staff. Laid most of them off. Many of them, they said, "Well, we're not going to fire you now. You have 90 days," which is not exactly incentive. We will continue to produce the Sports Illustrated brand, they said, in online content until the situation is fully resolved.
Yeah. But I mean, the same thing happened with CNET this week as well. I mean, CNET were put up for sale by their owners. That's a really crying shame for what used to be a great brand.
Totally destroyed it. That's Red Ventures, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course,
Exactly.
they did the same thing. They had an AI writing articles. So maybe that's the canary in the coal mine. When you start seeing AI written articles, that's a sign that if you start seeing AI generated podcasts on TWiT, that's a sure sign that the whole thing is going tits up, in the words of your people.
It's really important to understand that when we see things that AIs are good at, right, like identifying potentially cancerous masses on x-rays, or maybe outlining an essay, or maybe writing some software, that the way in which that makes for a better world is one in which the person,
a human
who is skilled, who would normally do that job, gets a second opinion.
Right.
Like, I really like that I have a car that when I put my signal light on, if there's a car in my blind spot, it beeps at me.
Yeah.
Right. And I rented a car a little while ago that had a thing where if I crossed the median, it had a virtual rumble strip. It had it had haptics in the steering wheel. Right. All those things are really great. And the thing to understand is that the pitch from the firms and that the pitch from the investors is not, hey, your radiologist who currently processes 10 chest x-rays a day will only process 9, because the second opinion from the AI is going to come up 1 out of 10 times, and that radiologist is going to redo it. You will catch more cancerous masses, but it's going to cost you more. The pitch for AI is fire some radiologists, right? And so I am all for things that help people. After many years of auto disabling spell check, or disabling auto spell check, I finally turned it back on, and I'm catching typos while I write. This is literally, I did this like a month ago. I have not had auto spell check on until a month ago for my whole writing career, because it drives me crazy to get interrupted.
That's impressive.
Are you a very good
I don't
speller,
like being
Cory?
interrupted. Well, I'm a pretty good speller, but I would run spell check after I was done with the document. What I didn't want was the machine saying, basically, like, it's just low-key Clippy, right? The underlined red line is low-key Clippy. You seem to be spelling a word, right? Would you like help with that? And I might, but I don't want help with it while I'm writing. And I reached a point where I finally said, okay, I'll do it.
No, I mean, we've got the
wait a
same
minute,
problem with
I'm
Grammarly,
sorry.
where you've got journalists using Grammarly or various other, AI apparently, writing tools which can, and it just comes across as so bland and
right.
Well, but
So
you can ignore it
badly.
So Cory, I just have to know though. You've turned it on now. Is it a disadvantage? Is it annoying you? Is it?
As is the case with many technological changes, it was very annoying at first, and then I got used to it, and it just regressed to the mean. This is the thing. I mean, I knew that would happen. It's the thing I tell everyone is like, oh, I could never switch to Linux or Firefox or Thunderbird or whatever. It's like, you know what? For the first 2 weeks, it's going to drive you crazy. And then, like, if you're ever noticing your operating system ever, something is bad. And I don't know. I don't notice my operating system. I don't think of myself as an Ubuntu user any more than I think of myself as a shoe wearer or someone with centralized heating or, like,
you're one of those centralized heating guys. I know.
Yeah. It doesn't make me a member of an oppressed ethnic minority or anything, right? But the other thing that I want to say is that oftentimes the solutions that automation proposes are solutions that literally can't work. So you talked about keeping your hands on the wheel, taking your hands off the wheel. I mean, when I'm in not the city I live in now, LA, but the city I grew up in, Toronto, or the city I'd spent 13 years in, London, I take my hands off the wheel. I'm traveling down the road all the time because I'm in a bus. And it's great.
You and never the reality put your hands on the wheel. In fact, it would be a breach of the law to put your hands on the wheel.
Geometry hates cars. Right? There isn't a world in which, like, there isn't an AI algorithm that will let you solve the Red Queen's race, where every time you add a car to the road, you increase the distance, you increase the amount of road you need, which increases the distance between the things that you're trying to get to, which increases the amount of cars that you need, right? I've been traveling to Southern California since 1989 when I was 18 years old. And I always started going to Disneyland from an early age. I then worked at Imagineering and was driving from Glendale down to Anaheim. And I've watched the 5 down in Orange County go from like 8 lanes to 16 lanes. And now there's places where I think it's over 30 lanes wide, and the traffic is worse.
It's worse,
right?
It's not better.
Bosch painting, right? There isn't an amount of cars that is going to solve this problem, but there is an amount of trains that will solve that problem. And so I just think that a lot of the times when we are confronted with really serious problems, there's a technological way of approaching it that's often posed as an all of the above solution, right? Where it's like, well, we need to do everything to, resolve the climate emergency or get people around cities. We need cars, we need buses, we need this, we need that. But these are actually at odds with each other, right? If you're building highways, you're not building subways.
What you really, I finished The Power Broker a few months ago and I can't stop talking about it. But this is one of the lessons of The Power Broker is this Robert Moses, who was not only racist, but just had, for some reason, believed in cars. I think he was taking money from the rubber manufacturers and the gasoline manufacturers and the car manufacturers, and was so adamantly against mass transit that he thwarted every attempt to do it in a sensible way. For instance, when they were building these highways, he called them parkways, because he thought of them as a park. Somebody pointed out, you could easily, at a minimal cost, put train tracks in the middle. You would then kill two birds with one stone because you've now got, during this infrastructure build, very inexpensively, you've got train tracks and cars. And he would thwart it at every
he built the footings so that it was impossible to install a train underneath it. He deliberately changed the shape of the footings to make sure no trains could run underneath
and he
them.
also made the bridges too low for buses because he didn't want black people bussed to his speeches.
Apparently that's a myth, but
it's not a myth. No. I've talked to people. Those bridges are 10 feet high. You could get a personal car beneath them, but not a bus.
So there's a really good read along of the Power Broker on 99% Invisible right now, and they just did the first episode.
Somebody's been telling me about this. I have to.
They had Robert Caro on. He's still.
Oh yeah,
had him on, and he talked about going to Robert Moses's offices and interviewing for the book, and he told this incredible story about the day Robert Moses figured out that it wasn't going to be flattering, and like
I'll have to listen to this.
It's a great I listened to it yesterday. It just dropped last week. It's terrific. I really recommend it. It's called The Power Broker, but it's in the 99% Invisible feed.
I'll tell you.
My wife recommended I read that book because I'd never even heard of Moses.
No, I hadn't either, and I grew up in New York. But it's kind of buried in the history of New York. But he created that city. I mean, as in the modern form. It's it's funny. It's something like 1,600 pages. It's so thick, you can barely carry it. And I wish it weren't over. Well, I was so sad when it ended. I want to read it again. It's one of those books where it's daunting to look at it, but then it's just incredible. Caro's amazing. There's also a good documentary. I think it's called Turn Every Page about Robert Gottlieb, his editor, and Robert Caro. Features both of them. That's really a great documentary. I highly recommend. I got to take a break. We're having way too much fun, and I didn't even get to enshittification. So we'll talk about that.
Have some fun with that one.
We're gonna have some fun with that. In fact, while I'm doing the ad, you can look up the original piece. It was republished in Wired, but read it on pluralistic.net, which is Cory's blog. The title of it is TikTok's enshittification. Is this the first time you used that phrase?
No, I'd used it a few times before that, but
this is the one that enshrined it in the American language.
And that was like a year ago yesterday or the day before.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Life comes at you fast.
Here is how platforms die. We're going to talk about that in just a bit. But first, a word from our sponsor. Cory Doctorow's here. Alex Lindsay, Iain Thomson. Is a great panel. More TWiT coming up. But first, a word from Palo Alto Networks. Palo Alto Networks offers ZT for OT. Ooh, without the trauma. Operational technology, zero trust. Keeping operational technology secure and running smoothly can be a tall order. It's enough to make even the coolest operations director wake up with night sweats, but now you can have peace of mind with Zero Trust OT Security. Zero Trust OT Security delivers comprehensive visibility and security for all OT assets, networks, and remote operations. The Palo Alto Network solution provides exceptional OT protection. More than 1,100 app IDs for OT protocols, 500 plus profiles for critical OT assets, and more than 650 OT-specific threat signatures supported. It provides best-in-class security while simplifying OT security management. It sees and protects everything in the network, and it automates threat detection while implementing zero trust across all operations. Of course, it's Palo Alto Network's Zero Trust for OT security. Sleep better with the most comprehensive platform to detect, manage, and secure OT assets. Learn how the Palo Alto Network's, I love it, ZT for OT, Zero Trust for OT security solution can achieve 351% ROI over 5 years. To learn more, check the link in the show notes or visit paloaltonetworks.com. That's paloaltonetworks.com. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Tech. One of the things I'd like to plug before we talk about how platforms die is how podcasting is dying. Really, you've written a little bit about this too, Cory, I know, because of Google and Facebook and YouTube sucking all the wind out of advertising. Podcasts like ours come to you via RSS, which means we don't know anything about you. We can't track you. We don't. But Spotify can, Amazon can, and so can every platform that requires you to use their app to listen to shows. Advertisers are so hooked. It's like sugar or heroin. They're so hooked on metrics and knowing more about the audience, and they just don't want to give that up. So increasingly, it's been difficult for us to sell advertising. We love our advertisers, and we know we do a great job for them. They benefit from it, but they still want those audience demographics, and we're still unwilling to give it to them. So we realized
Google.
Sorry,
I was going to say Google's Manifest V3 is going to really put the cat amongst the pigeons on this one.
Yeah. Now, Google, actually, we should talk about this because Steve did a great piece on this new thing that Google is doing to replace third-party cookies. It's really interesting. We'll talk about that, too, a little bit later on the show. I just want to say at this point, if you want to support the network, the best way to do it, yes, support our advertisers. Yes, we're going to continue to get great advertisers on, but the best way to do it is to join the club. Increasingly, this is the value that we add. Is a community, and it's a great community, and we know you love being a part of this community. So if you join the club, $7 a month, that's all. You get ad-free versions of all the shows. You get the Discord. You get the TWiT Plus feed. You get shows we produce exclusively for the club, including iOS Today is now moved into the club, plus lots of fun events. We've got Stacey's Book Club coming up in a couple of weeks. That's going to be great. We're doing Paolo Bacigalupi's The Water Knife. Wow, what a book that is. That'll be a very interesting club event, February 8th.
We have the same agent, me and Paolo.
Do you? I loved The Wind-Up Girl.
Great book.
Great, one of my favorite sci-fi books. And then I started reading The Water Knife. I haven't finished it yet. I'm reading it for the book club. It's grim. It's about a very grim climate change future. But it's also important, and he's such a good writer. It's just his characterizations are
and a mensch. Is he a really swell fellow?
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah,
one of the good ones.
Well, I love his stuff. Anyway, that'll be part of the club too. So if you would this is just a plug to join Club Twit. $7 a month. twit.tv/Club Twit. We love our Twit Club members, and we'd like you to be part of this distinctive group of smart people in the club. Thank you in advance. I appreciate it. Come join us.
It is a great meme.
So, enshittification. And this is how Cory begins that now, I think, classic blog post. Here is how platforms die. First, they're good to their users. Think Amazon and its customer-centric approach. Then they abuse their users to make things better for their business customers. Again, think about Amazon and the third-party sellers. Half of what you buy on Amazon now doesn't come from Amazon. It comes from third-party sellers. And then finally, and this is the stage Amazon's in, they abuse those business customers to claw back all the value for themselves, and then they die. It's kind of the new digital business cycle. And it happens, and you can see it over and over again. Cory's been very good about documenting it. Cory, your argument, which I completely agree with, is not that you're going to ever stop this, but this is the argument for interoperability. We should be able to hop from platform to platform, and as platforms start becoming user hostile, we just go to the next one. Right?
Yeah, I think about that as being sort of related to the problem of wildfire in California. We've always had fire in California. The indigenous people who lived here before the settlers came used to have controlled burns, and that would clear the dead stuff away from the bottom of the forest, and it would open up the canopy for new growth. And when the settlers came, they declared war on fire. And
the way, isn't it amazing that these indigenous peoples knew to do that?
Well, they were here for like
a long time,
millennia, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe they didn't
so.
at first, right? They just figured it out.
They learned. Yeah, if we don't burn it, it will. God will.
So ending good fire didn't end fire, it just ended controlled fire, and then now we have wildfire, right? So even if we resolve the climate emergency, California is still going to burn because we have all this fire debt.
In the same way, also the ecological cycle. It's part of how it works.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of plants that only reproduce by creating fire, and then their seed pods open in the fire and stuff. But the same thing used to be true of tech, right? It used to be prior to the Carter era especially, but then slowly less and less in the years afterwards, that companies weren't really allowed to buy their competitors or merge with their competitors. They weren't allowed to sell goods below cost in order to prevent other firms from entering their markets. Those were all just generally prohibited. There were exceptions around the margins, but that was the way things worked. And so it meant that when no one at Cray could figure out how to make a good computer anymore, that was the end of Cray. And it meant that, when IBM monopolized its market, it was taken to court for 12 years and eventually had to do things like make PCs out of commodity components and unbundle the OS and get a third-party company called Microsoft to make its OS. And so we used to have companies that rose and fall, right? We used to have good fire. And it meant that users could be protected because it was very easy to escape a platform. If you had an IBM mainframe that IBM didn't want to support anymore, there were the so-called seven dwarves, the mostly Japanese electronics companies that would continue to make peripherals for them that were plug compatible. And if you used Mac OS and your CIO wanted to take your computer away and replace it with a Windows machine because Mac Office was so bad that you couldn't communicate with your colleagues, Steve Jobs could just have his technologist reverse engineer Office and make iWork with pages, numbers, and Keynote that could read and write Word, Excel, and PowerPoint files. And you could switch from one to the other. In fact, right after iWork, we got the switch campaign, right? It's very easy to switch. You should switch.
It's the plug compatible software. Yeah.
Right. But do that today, and they'll bomb you till the rubble bounces, right? Make a runtime for iOS that can, or runtime for another platform that can run iOS apps and play back media that Apple has sold you, or create a scraper that lets you leave Facebook but fetch the messages that are showing up in your inbox and
OG.
Put them in your Mastodon inbox, or your OG inbox, or create OG app. Google at one point sent software agents to every server on the internet to say, "Hi, I'm just a user. Have you got any pages? I'd like all of your pages, please." And if you were to try and scrape Google right now, they bomb you till you glowed, right? And so my argument is that we've allowed these firms to grow to an unsustainable size, right? That a firm that has $3 trillion in business and is taking 30% margins out of an entire industry and deciding unilaterally what apps can and can't exist, or effectively what businesses can and can't exist, or Amazon, which is taking 51% out of every dollar that its sellers make, and is the largest employer in the country, and whose employees are laboring under just the most incredibly awful conditions. They have double the accident rate in Amazon warehouses relative to other fulfillment centers. And we all know about peeing in bottles and so on. That the remedy for that is not to try and make those companies behave themselves. I mean, we should do that too, but not to the extent that we create rules that make it hard for other companies to enter the market, and not to the extent that we have companies saying, well, if you force us to open our app store, interoperate our chat protocol, or allow third parties to fulfill orders that are placed through our e-commerce platform, or if you prohibit us from selling on the platform that we own, where we are competing with our own independent vendors, then we won't be able to keep our users safe. Right? That ultimately the way you keep users safe is by evacuating them from the fire zone, not by adding more fire suppression to the zone, which tempts more people to pile into this place that is going to burn, right? That where they're in danger all the time.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Facebook get a big advantage when they created a tool to allow people from MySpace to transface straightforward over with all their contacts? If you actually pitched that to Meta now, they would sue you into oblivion.
Well, it's what they did to a company called Power Ventures. They destroyed them for making an interoperable multi-platform inbox for Facebook, LinkedIn, and a bunch of other platforms, Twitter, and so on. Some of which used APIs and some of which used scraping. And every pirate dreams of being an admiral, and their pitch is always the same. When we did this to those other companies, that was progress, but when new companies do it to us, that's piracy. And I'm not faulting Apple for reverse engineering Office. I think that was great. I was a CIO back then, and I was making those calls where we had designers, in an office full of PCs, the designer with the only Mac, who just first I would put a PC on their desk to use as a Office workstation because they could not read or write Office files that came from their Windows colleagues without corrupting them. And so they would switch to another computer. And when that became too ungainly, I just put big graphics cards in their PCs and threw away their Macs. And I didn't like it and they didn't like it. But what was I going to do? I loved it when Apple came out with iWork Suite. And I just wish they'd share, right? I loved it when Google came up with a great way of indexing the web. I just wish they'd share.
Yeah. But you said we don't need regulation, but it does argue for good antitrust regulation, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we need antitrust. We do need interoperability mandates. We need to clear the way. We need to immunize people who build interoperable products. And the enshittification thesis has broadened significantly since that first article. It's been just over a year. I just put together a book proposal for it, and I'm giving a big speech in Berlin that kind of tracks the book proposal next week. I'm going to be there for Transmediale, and I'm going to give them a clue-in lecture at the Canadian Embassy. I think it's sold out, but you can check.
Will it be streamed? It probably won't be streamed.
They're going to record it, though.
Is this the Marshall McLuhan lecture? Are you doing the Marshall?
Yeah. At the
Cory.
Wow. Very cool.
That's high praise. Holy cow.
It's going to be cool. I mean, as a Canadian, that's about as good as it gets, for sure.
Yes.
That's yeah. But I in the speech, I lay out this idea that there are 4 forces that keep companies from enshittifying. That one of them is this fear of self-help, right? The fear that a user will type into a search engine, how do I get my data out of here? How do I block these ads? How do I stop recommendations? How do I turn off this anti-feature? How do I jailbreak my printer to put in third-party ink? Because at that point, your revenue from that user falls to 0, right? So that's one thing that firms fear. And the broad prohibition against reverse engineering and this kind of adversarial interoperability has killed that constraint. But there are other constraints. So one of them is competition, right? Companies that fear that you will go to a rival are companies that will probably treat you better on average. And if they don't, you can always go to that rival. Now, when firms are allowed to buy all their competitors, Google being a company that has only made one really successful product in-house, a 25-year-old search engine, and then virtually everything else
successful.
Well, very, right? But then everything
not
else
so much
they've made
these days, but yeah.
That's better. It's enough.
Anymore, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh, man.
everything else they've made in-house has failed, almost with that exception.
Yeah.
And everything they have that works, their video platform, mobile, ad tech, server management, docs, collaboration, maps, satellite photos. There are other people's ideas that they bought and operationalized. And as an ops guy, I mean, I'm not saying operations is nothing, but they're not Willy Wonka's idea factory. They're like rich Uncle Pennybags and his room full of janitors, right?
I had a Google PR because we refer to them as a chocolate factory because they came up with so many interesting innovations. And I had a Google PR say, if we could get you to drop the chocolate factory thing, we would be, I have a directorship by now. But you're right. I mean, other than search, everything else has been bought in. And it's the same with Meta. It's the same to an extent with other tech companies as well.
It reminds me, though, of Larry Lessig, who for a long time was really fighting against, like you, Cory, against copy protection back in the day, DRM, and realized ultimately that what's happened, and I think this is really true in this case, what's happened is these companies have become so powerful and, more importantly, so rich, and our government is so based on money that they are effectively impregnable. They can't be beaten because they become so powerful. They have so much money. They can buy Congress. They can buy the presidency. They can buy the Supreme Court. And so it's so hard for us to turn it around at this point.
But it's not just how much money they have. It's how few companies are in the sector. Because if you remember the Napster wars when Larry was doing his thing, the tech industry was 10 times larger than the entertainment industry, but they got their ass kicked because they were 100 squabbling companies. Right now, they're a cartel of 5 companies. Whereas before, the music and Hollywood studios firms were 7 companies, right? They found it very easy to agree on what they were going to say to Congress. Tech was never on message, right? They were always stabbing each other in the back. Cartels are a necessary precondition for regulatory capture, which is how you get this environment today where privacy, labor, and consumer rights can be violated with impunity provided you do it with an app. And self-help measures can be destroyed because you can not only, when you capture your regulators, stop from being regulated, but you can also regulate your competitors, right? You can stop new market entrants from entering by having regulations that prevent them from doing these things.
So what Larry concluded was, well, the only solution is to any of these problems is to get money out of politics.
Money out of politics. Sure.
He ran for president briefly on the premise that I'm going to choose a really good vice president. I'm going to get into office, and this is the only way I can get money out of politics because, of course, all the incumbents are living off of the trough. They're not going to abandon the trough. So I'm going to get in. I'm going to be president. I'm going to get campaign reform, finance reform by executive order. Then I'll resign because I don't want to do the rest of it.
Day one. That was his promise. It was a great stunt.
A little chaotic, but quixotic.
The first 3 forces that regulate companies: competition, regulation, and self-help, have all been paid to by the elimination of antitrust and the permission for firms to grow through acquisition and predatory pricing. And then the 4th thing that always protected us was workers. Because although tech workers have never been unionized in great numbers, they were in great demand. In fact, that's why they never saw the need to unionize, because they had so much worker power just per se.
They already had collective bargaining.
I won't do it, I'll quit. Yeah. And so for a long time, you had these workers who were vulnerable to exploitation because they saw themselves as like fulfilling a holy mission. That's why Don't Be Evil and all those other corporate mottos mattered, because that the workers took them seriously, and they would be, extremely hardcore, as Musk puts it, or Fobazi-Ettar calls it vocational awe, when you take your job seriously and you care about it. And so you let yourself be talked into, missing kids' birthday parties and your doctor's appointments and like your fertility window and whatever. And as a result, when their bosses said, hey, this thing that you worked so hard on, we demand that you it, they would say no, and you're going to have to fire me because I'm not going to do it, and I know I can get a job across the street from someone who won't make me destroy the thing that I gave up my heart and soul to do. Now, that worked for a long time, which is one of the reasons that I think all those other constraints falling away was not felt as sharply. But as firms have become more concentrated, they've also become more able to dictate terms to their workforce. So last year, Google fired 12,000 employees just months after they did a stock buyback that would have paid their salaries for 27 years. And I think now every Googler has gotten the message that if you tell your boss, I'm not going to identify that product, you'll have to fire me, your boss is going to say, great, turn in your badge and don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. And so now we have been shorn of all of these constraints on the worst impulses of the worst people in companies that have always been mixed bags, and everything is going downhill very quickly. But the thing about this analysis is that it tells us what we need to do to unwind it, to disimplify things, restore labor power, restore self-help measures, muscular, highly administratable regulations on privacy, consumer protection, and labor law, and restore competition, block rotten mergers like Microsoft Activision, which Lena Khan is still saying she's going to block, prohibit predatory pricing, continue to unwind mergers. The America Act would force both Google and Meta to break up their ad tech stacks and spin them off. The 2 sponsors for that bill are Ted Cruz and Elizabeth Warren.
It's a bizarre
Bill.
That is possibly the worst drunken hookup you'd ever see. But hey, if it gets the job done, I'm all
Well,
for
my
it.
fear is the reason you get these, and that, by the way, it's also with other acts like the No Fakes Act and the Interoperability Act. You get the left and the right merging is not because they agree on anything, but because they both agree we got to screw big tech for opposing reasons. Frankly,
contingent. That's how we got Lena Khan, right? I think it was 12 or 18 Republican senators voted for her because they thought it'd be a big FU to Twitter and Facebook.
Right.
But we got Lena Khan.
Her. Yeah.
She's done more in 3 years than her predecessors did over the last 40.
She was the one behind that law that has to be as easy to cancel as it is to join, and
banning non-competes, making privacy an element of
she's lost a lot in court, and people have focused on that. They focus on the failure and things like Activision,
she blocked
Microsoft.
4 major mergers in December.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. Yes, she's had a couple of court losses, not all of which are losses, by the way. There's some are still under appeal. I think that the argument that the reason the Wall Street Journal ran 80 editorials in 3 years about Lena Khan saying that she was useless and not getting anything done is pretty thin. Like Rupert Murdoch did not pay his staff to write 80. Yeah, if you're doing nothing, Rupert Murdoch does not pay his staff to write 80 editorials about how useless you are.
Well, no, but this is it. It's not just the amount of stuff that's been blocked. It's the amount of takeovers that have now been withdrawn because they're now seeing
there's a chilling effect.
They're getting more muscular about this.
That's right.
And damn right, good on them.
Yeah. Hey, I want to take a quick break. We have more to talk about. This brings us to Beeper, because there's an example of a company that attempted to create interoperability on its own. And what did Apple do to Beeper? But first, a word from our sponsor. Thanks to Cory Doctorow and Alex Lindsay and Iain Thomson for making this I knew it would be, but it's even better than I thought, a very special episode of This Week in Tech. Our show today brought to you by Drata. With Drata, companies can complete audits, monitor controls, and expand security assurance efforts to scale. With a suite of more than 75 integrations, Drata streamlines your compliance frameworks, providing 24-hour continuous control monitoring so you can focus on scaling securely. Drata easily integrates through applications like AWS or Azure or GitHub or Okta or Cloudflare, and I can go on and on. Drata's automated dynamic policy templates support companies that are new to compliance using integrated security awareness training programs, automated reminders to ensure smooth employee onboarding. And as the only player in the industry to build on a private database architecture, Drata ensures your data can never be accessed by anyone outside your organization. All Drata customers receive a team of compliance experts, including a designated customer success manager, pre-audit calls available to prepare you for when your audits begin. And you'll love Drata's Audit Hub, and so will your auditor. That's the cool part. It's the solution to faster, more efficient audits. Save hours of back and forth communication, never misplace crucial evidence, share documentation instantly. So the bottom line here is say goodbye to manual evidence collection. Say hello to automated compliance when you visit drata.com/twit. Request a demo and get 10% off. drata.com/twit. Bringing automation to compliance at Drata speed. We thank them so much for their support of the show. Beeper says Apple's now blocking their Macs, the users' Macs, from using iMessage entirely. This has been an ongoing and kind of depressing saga. Beeper attempting. Now, I have to say, I'm not surprised. I did not think Apple would allow this to happen. Beeper seemed to think they would. Beeper created an Android app that would allow you to be a blue bubble instead of a green bubble to other Apple Messages users. But Apple stopped it pretty quickly. Within a few days, they stopped it. And so Beeper has been trying a variety of ways to get around Apple's.
Well, they went back and forth. Beeper had a little stockpile of different ways to do it.
Yeah, and all of which have been thwarted.
Now they've all been thwarted, yeah.
It is remarkable, though, that, the color of the message tone is so important to so many users.
Yeah, because this is actually not a very good messaging platform. You can't use it as your primary messaging platform on Android because it doesn't support SMS. I think this is...
Well, I think that the way to understand this is not to think about this as something that Beeper gets an advantage from or that Android users get an advantage from, but that Apple users get an advantage from. Mm-hmm. So if you're an Apple user, Apple takes your privacy pretty seriously, right? They fought the FBI over end-to-end encryption. They fought the UK government on it. They wobbled a little on the client-side scanning, but they saw the light. They've been pretty good on this, and they've been burned by problems with security in their messaging tools, right? Where we had so-called fappening, right? The mass leak of non-consensual leak of nudes from cloud hacks that had originated often as messages that were synced to Apple's cloud platform. And if you are an Apple user and you know someone who's an Android user and you have something to say to them, Apple, by default, will not give you any privacy in that message. You end up sending an SMS, which is the least private protocol imaginable. I mean, it is like to call it a dumpster fire is to do violence to good, hardworking dumpster fires. It is wildly insecure. And if you add an Android user to a group chat, every single person in that group chat's messages are now in the clear. And so Beeper came along and gave the Apple users a way to communicate with their Android fellows that maintained the privacy of the platform. Now, Apple made some non-specific claims about Beeper's security. Those claims should be taken seriously. If Beeper is making a claim that they're adding security to your platform, we should interrogate those claims. And so Beeper then published their source, and to my knowledge, no one has found any of the vulnerabilities that Apple discussed there. Apple, meanwhile, has not adhered to the minimum standard for describing a security defect, which is, to add enough detail, some proof of concept code, perhaps. The same things Apple would require from someone who reported a security defect to their own bug bounty program. None of that has been in evidence. We just have Apple's word for it. Apple did, when Apple went after Beeper Plus users, they were, every time they tightened the noose, they made things less secure for their own users. And this last move, right, where if you have used your own Mac device to generate an iMessage identifier so that you could use your Android device securely as well, now Apple will strike off all of the devices that you own so that none of them can use iMessage apparently ever again. Really goes to show you that this is about taking the privacy and security of Apple users and sitting at below the hierarchy of Apple's needs relative to the lock-in that Apple gets from having a proprietary messaging platform. And if there was ever any doubt, just remember what Tim Cook told the reporter who said, "What do I tell my mom who wants to communicate with me and I use iMessage?" He said, "Buy your mom an iPhone." And you know what? One of the clinical signs that you're in a cult is when the leader of the cult tells you to cut off contact with anyone who doesn't do the same things as you.
That's a good point. Then there's the sad story of Ello, which I kickstarted way back in the day. This was going to be a Facebook alternative. Andy Bio writing on his Waxy Links the obituary for Ello. It's over. They really, when I said over, they turned off the servers.
What was the business model? Like, I don't understand what the business model was.
There was no business model, as Andy points out. There had to be, because they took investment. They took venture capital.
Yeah.
So he knew there would be something wrong in the long run. In fact, it's amazing. They went 10 years. But they did eventually sell to somebody who was going to kind of mine.
But secretly.
They didn't tell anybody.
They'd structured as a public benefit company, and then they secretly transferred the assets to a for-profit company.
Yeah.
And then they sold that company secretly to another company. I think it's a really good example of a theme that's come up many times in our discussion today, which is that it's not that people are bad or good. It's that when they are unconstrained, they can make bad choices. And because they were able to operate in secret, because they did have the constraint of running out of money because they didn't have a business model, they ended up rationalizing a series of bad choices, one after another, that led to one day, literally people who had been told you will never be the product, you will never be sold, waking up to discover first that their data had all been sold, and second, that it had been deleted. right? Like the two worst things that can happen to an artist. And this was a platform for artists and their portfolios. And it really shows you that the best of us with the best of intentions are very fallible, and that this is why we need external constraint, right? This is why we need someone to call us on our nonsense, and why users need to be able to move very easily from one platform to another. You know, there's this idea in economics called a Ulysses Pact, because Ulysses, you know, tied himself to the mast so that when the siren sang, he couldn't jump in the sea. He knew that he would be weak in the future, so while he was strong, he bound himself to a commitment. You know, when you go on a diet and throw away your Oreos, that's a Ulysses Pact. When you license your software GPL, that's a Ulysses Pact, because your investors can never make you make it proprietary because it's a perpetual license, right? And they could have done all kinds of Ulysses Pacts, right? They could have published their quarterly books. They could have live streamed their staff meetings. They could have done all kinds of things, you know, that no firm has done, to be fair. But, you know, when Waxy first published and said, hey, these guys have taken some venture capital, I don't understand how they're going to be able to resist their investors' demands for profit, their response was basically like, we are extra chill dudes and you should just chill out because we're good. Right?
Trust us, everything's going to be fine.
Right.
Yeah,
and
that
maybe
works.
they believed it. Right. I think lots of people believe that when the moment comes, they'll do the right thing. But the right thing can sometimes feel like, well, I talked 150 of my friends into risking their kids' college funds to come work for my startup. I can let that startup fold next week by standing on principle, or I can live to fight another day by making this compromise. And you do that enough times, and the next thing you know, they're pulling the plug on your server.
Yeah. As of July, Ello shut down. And if you were a creator that had content on there, apparently some people were foolish enough to
Just
put
stuff.
like all their stuff there and nowhere else.
And I think that as someone who's on like pretty much every platform, like a lot of us, we're you know, across those platforms, I really don't care whether they're interoperable or not. Like, and I just decided I'm not going to use that one anymore. And I don't really turn it off. I don't throw some big thing, but I go to Facebook like once a quarter.
Right.
You know, I use it for a couple. You know, I use it to log into my Meta, my Quest, you know, those are the things, and it's on a phone that I don't use, like, and I don't, like, my whole thing about, I don't put Facebook on my phone. I don't do it because I have any kind of privacy issues. I have to do it because it drains my battery to the ground. Like putting Facebook apps on your phone, Meta apps on your phone, just are you know, they literally half your battery life on an iPhone, and so
it's bloatware as well. I mean, the amount of size of those files is insane.
So I go on, you know, I go onto it. I have learned that there's a whole generation that you can only contact into Instagram. Like you know, like there's, you know, and they don't have any. Like I go, can we send email or text? And they're like, really? Let's talk about that a little bit. And so, but I think that, you know, I guess I don't really worry about that. I do think that there is a lot of energy built up. There's an opportunity for people to build other formats. I don't think this one was it, but I think you do have to know how you're going to make money. Like there can't be, but I also think that you're going to see something that is a privacy first, that is, you know, lets people build networks, that is also most likely bot free. You know, and there's ways to do that, you know, and that just say, hey, we're not going to, you know, it's going to be like the Star Wars thing where we don't let those, you know, we don't serve those, and I think that there's ways to do that you know, and it's complicated, but there are ways to get that done, and I think that that's going to build up pressure in the same way that, you know, when I was working at Sony, we constantly brought up the fact that $16.99 for a CD is too much money. Like I was a rep, you know, for Sony, we were like, $16.99 is way too much. It's cost 44 cents to make that CD. And they're like, well, there's the IP. I'm like, well, you're selling the same IP for cassettes. The cassettes are $6.99. The CDs, you're charging $10 more because you can. Like, you know, the difference between the hardware, the cassette was 21 cents. The CD was, with the casing and everything else, was 44 cents. And they were charging $6.99 and $16.99. And I was like, you're building a bad relationship with your consumers, and they're not going to care about you when the next thing happens. And sure enough, so what happens is these things can change very quickly. Like, and we did tests. We took Ned's Atomic Dustbin and sold it for $7.99, and it went gold. Like, you know, like it went in a vertical that shouldn't have, you know. And so the thing is that it worked. The issue is that what happens, I think, though, is that eventually this catches up with people, that builds up pressure of distrust and dislike. When Napster came out, no one cared. Like they had been screwed for so long that no one cared about the industry. No one cared about what it was doing to anybody because they knew they were paying way more than it was. And so I think that I don't know what that is yet, but I think that there will be opportunities to come out that everyone's going to jump onto something else because they don't like where they're at, and I think that younger folks are much more like, I have kids that are 15 and 16. They're very fluid. Like, they're not worried about what's on their network. They're not worried about the fact that they've got a bunch of pictures on Facebook, or they never had. I wouldn't let them go on Facebook. But the point is that that community doesn't really care about interoperability. They're just going to stop using something, and it's just going to become a ghost town. And and they're just going to move on to the next thing. And so I don't think that's as much of a lock-in for the next generation. What is a lock-in is green bubbles. I will say, as a father of teenagers, they're like, oh, I was asking them about that.
It really sells
that's
iPhones.
No joke. That's no joke. Well, it's 87% of kids under 18 are on iPhones.
Yeah.
And the amount of pressure, that they have to be a blue bubble is intense.
My son, I asked my son when he was in a frat at CU Boulder, how many iPhones? He said all but one. We're all iPhones, but there's this one guy who's using Android, and he never gets invited to anything because we don't want to have him on our group chat. Yeah. There's huge peer pressure. Huge peer pressure, which is stupid, but
it's true that there's lots of people who don't care until they do, right? Like, so the first generation of young people who got online, who loved LiveJournal and couldn't bring their community with them somewhere else when LiveJournal went to shit, are still sad about losing LiveJournal.
Yeah.
And there are people who have much more consequential reasons not to leave a platform. So we advised some people at EFF who were a community of breast cancer previvors who had been very actively courted by Facebook when Facebook was trying to encourage the growth of medical communities on their platform. And so they had set up there, and of course, it's really important, these groups, to these people. If you're a breast cancer previvor, which means that you have the gene that means that it's likely you will get breast cancer, it means that not only might you be sick, but you are also very likely to be taking care of a sick relative or grieving for a sick relative, a mother, a sister, a daughter, a grandmother, an aunt. And so this community matters a lot to them. Now, members of the community identified a bug in Facebook that allowed you to enumerate the full membership of any group on Facebook, whether or not you were a member of it. And this was obviously really important to them as a medical group. And they reported it to Facebook, and Facebook said, that's not a bug, it's a feature request. And we're not going to do it, because this is actually something that helps us with our ad tech, being able to enumerate groups. And eventually they convinced them to do a minor lockdown where if you joined a group, you could enumerate it, but if you weren't a member of the group, you couldn't enumerate it. Even that was not enough for them. They would like to go somewhere else. The problem is that they have the collective action problem that we've all faced, right? You go to a con and there's 20 of you standing around after the closing keynote. You all want to go out for dinner and you can't agree where. Right. And 2 hours later, you're still arguing about where to go to dinner. Now multiply that by 200 friends. And some of them are on Facebook because that's where their kids' football team plans the carpool. And some are there because that's where their customers are. And some are there because they're migrants or refugees from another country. And it's the only way they stay in touch with the people back home. And you say, okay, everyone, tomorrow we're leaving Facebook and we're going to wherever, right? Threads, Ello, Mastodon, whatever, right? It's just impossible.
We tried to organize our neighborhood of 6 homes, 6 families. Right. And we went from door to door and we said, which messenger program would you like to use? And there is no group because there was never any agreement.
Next door.
So here's this group of people still stuck to Facebook.
Gosh.
Oh God, no! Next door is such a fetid hole.
Actually, I suggested Next Door, and it was immediately vetoed. So at least they're smart enough to know better than that.
No, I mean, we have a simple email list on our street. It's just one guy who is the street coordinator.
That's a good idea. Maybe we should do
emails.
Yeah,
it's just like.
Email's the original
the
meta
truck
protocol.
is coming down to empty the bins today. Yeah. Clear your car off this side.
Remember, though, it wasn't. Some of us have been around long enough to remember when email was siloed. You were on MCI mail or CompuServe, and you couldn't talk to one another.
Have you installed the X500 certificate yet?
But so I don't know how email got open. And
RFC 422, I think.
That's amazing.
The story is that the person working on it said, we'll do the authentication later. We'll ship it now and do the authentication next year.
Yeah.
And authentication turned out to be the last 10% that was, 99% of the work, which they just didn't do. It's like the epitome of that Brian Eno aphorism, be the first person to try not doing something that no one else has ever not done before. People to try an email system without authentication.
Yeah. I mean,
Wait a minute, I'm still trying to solve that one. Be the first person to not do something that no one else has ever not done before.
That's what eBay did, right? It was like the, auctions without an auctioneer who held things in escrow. And it's what Kickstarter did, the first street performer protocol that didn't have an escrow service. So you got the money before you delivered the thing. So the problem is that you generally can't deliver the thing unless you got the money. So Kickstarter, all the previous versions of that were like, we're going to hold on to the money until you deliver. And everyone who did it was like, well, I didn't deliver because you didn't give me any money to deliver with.
Meanwhile, I'm still waiting for the very first thing I ordered on Kickstarter, which was a set of dice.
I put money when I put money into the Kickstarter. I always go, it's kind of like a little surprise gift for future me.
It is.
I go. I'm gonna throw. It's like a little lottery, and I throw the money in, and I never put more money into it than I can afford to lose, and I just throw it in, and then like 6 months later, a random gift occurs sometimes.
I got a piece of luggage in the mail.
I forgot that it existed. I didn't even know that. I forgot that I even put money into it. And I was like, oh, this is such a great gift.
I had ordered a piece of luggage that had a built-in battery to charge your phone, which 5 or 6 years ago seemed like a really good idea. Got it in the mail. And of course, you can't bring that luggage.
Fire.
You can't bring it on the plane because you can't remove the battery. So
you have to go in there and unscrew it now. Yeah. It is a really nice piece of.
Here's some fun
I did this. Sorry,
the guy who did Beeper created the Pebble watch.
Right.
The one of the most successful Kickstarter ever and the birthplace of smartwatches. Also, as someone who's run a bunch of Kickstarters in the last couple of years, please, if you back a Kickstarter, go and fill in your survey. I am like every week getting things like, oh, you've just got another order for a book that you sold someone 2 years ago, and they finally filled in your survey, and you got to find a copy of the book and sign it and bring it to the post office for them.
Well, this happens to me all the time.
Fill in your survey.
I can never see the survey emails. They go somewhere, I don't know where.
Yeah, I know.
Some black hole.
It's a real problem. They should do the surveys in advance and then like at purchase time, and then give you the option of amending it. Yeah. And if you don't amend it, it just gets fulfilled to your default one. Because this come back later and fill in a survey. Notice an email, come back later and fill in a survey is a real Achilles heel.
I really feel like I know that they have interface teams, but they really need to take it more seriously. I am struck by, and I talk about this all the time with other folks that are doing design, of how important it is to really think about how the interface is going to drive behavior. And if you create any little lip, like any little lip, you can lose huge amounts of people because you just made it. You created some little glitch that didn't. Like we've had problems where when you click on the button, it took an extra 2 seconds for it to respond. Like the web page didn't respond for 2 seconds. It crashed our servers. Why did it crash our servers? Because people just kept on hitting the button. Like, so suddenly every person was hitting the button 40 times instead of once. And when we took that out, everything worked again.
I'm sorry. I'm filling out a survey from something I bought 3 years ago, and I forgot to fill out the survey.
Thank you, Leo.
There you go.
Thank you on behalf of every Kickstarter.
I really wanted that book, Cory, and I just completely forgot. Let's take a little break. We'll come back with more in just a little bit. Microsoft has just announced that, our executive's email was hacked. But don't worry, you're safe.
Get me started.
You're safe. Don't worry. Our show today brought to you by ZipRecruiter. According to Forbes, January is the hottest month for hiring. Who knew? I didn't know that. And business owners and hiring managers are right now on the hunt for top talent. But in this market, it's not easy. If you're currently hiring, I know you can relate to this. We've gone through it. It's challenging to find qualified candidates. And then when you do find a qualified candidate, you're competing against 20 other companies that are trying to hire them. That's why you need ZipRecruiter. That's exactly why you need ZipRecruiter. Their powerful matching technology finds the right people for your roles fast. And then you invite them, which puts you right to the top of the stack because they're saying, oh, well, these guys like me. I'm going to apply there. Right now, you can try it for free. ZipRecruiter.com/twit. After you post your job, ZipRecruiter's smart technology shows you candidates whose skills and experience match. And then to encourage those good candidates to apply, ZipRecruiter lets you send them a personal invite. This really works. Yes, it's competitive. Good people have a lot of offers, but if you invite them personally, man, I can tell you from experience, it really works. As you rate candidates, ZipRecruiter sends you more of the ones you like from thousands of new job seekers who join the site. This algorithm is so smart. This month, find the talent you need to fill all your roles with ZipRecruiter. See for yourself why 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Just go to our exclusive web address right now, ZipRecruiter. Get it for free, ZipRecruiter.com/twit. Please use that address. We want them to know you saw it here. ZipRecruiter.com/TWiT. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Now, we do have a little movie we made. Benito has just run out of the room. Maybe he's going to get the reel. Can you thread the projector quickly and play that little movie with some of the best things that happened this week on TWiT? We have a superstar amongst us now. You saw him last week testifying for the United States Senate.
You didn't play any of my testimony. You got
No,
bored.
we did.
I didn't hear it on the podcast.
Oh, maybe that was before the show then.
Yeah, thank you very much. I put on a tie.
Because it was quite eloquent.
This is what happens when you leave us, Jet.
Previously on TWiT. TWiT News.
With Galaxy AI, S24 series is the device that brings to life your vision of a better tomorrow.
Language can be a barrier. We're thrilled to offer a solution by providing real-time voice translation while you're on a call.
That's cool. That's
We did not
say that.
We're actually going to rock everyone's world.
Oh, boy.
And I'm not kidding. By examining and mostly understanding what Google has been up to for the past 3 years, why it is going to truly change everything we know about the way advertisements are served to web browser users and what it all means for the future.
This Week in Google.
Have you gone to the GPT store and have you gotten all of the AI girlfriends that are available? Because that's
Are there
apparently-
AI girlfriends?
Apparently they're not supposed to be there, but there's a lot of them.
Here's one. I'm Jessica, your ex-girlfriend you never shared any interests with. Here's Nadia.
That sounds somebody's having issues and they're working through them.
TWiT. For help with the technology addiction problem, call 1-800-TWiT.
What should I ask your virtual boyfriend?
I'm doing a podcast. What do you think about it?
That's fantastic, sweetheart. I'm sure you'll be amazing at it. What's your podcast about? You.
About 2 hours.
He cares
long.
so much.
We had a lot of fun with that virtual boyfriend, I must say. And even though OpenAI says there are no virtual girlfriends on ChatGPT, there are hundreds in the GPT store. I don't know. They're not doing much to block it. And why should they? If you want an AI girlfriend, go for it, or boyfriend. Live it up. Go for it. Microsoft, they made the announcement, which, credit to them. They say Microsoft's senior leadership emails were accessed by a nation state. They think the same Russian hackers that did SolarWinds, which was devastating. Nobelium. And I got to read this. Beginning in late November 23, the threat actor used a password spray attack, whatever that is, to compromise a legacy non-production test tenant account. And by the way, by doing so, gain a foothold to access a very small percentage of Microsoft's corporate email accounts, including members of our senior leadership team and employees in our cybersecurity, legal, and other functions, and exfiltrated some emails and attached documents.
Well, no, I mean, when they're saying they targeted a very small number of our executive team,
the exact people they wanted.
Chinese military parade of red flags.
Yes.
Because that's what they were after.
And by the way, they said, oh, don't worry. As far as we can tell, no customer accounts have been attacked. The attack, this is again another quote, was not the result of a vulnerability in Microsoft's products or services. To this date, there's no evidence that a threat actor had any to customer environments, production systems, source codes, or AI systems. But let me go back to how they got in. A password spray attack to compromise a legacy, non-production, test, tenant account, which apparently had permissions to access all of Microsoft's internal emails. There's something really wrong with this picture.
Fine.
It's fine. You're okay. Don't worry. Wow. This can't
just, I mean, when you're going after that tight a level of Microsoft management, that isn't just like, oh, yeah, we had a slight vulnerability. This was a serious hacking attempt.
It's as bad as it can get.
Yeah.
So when they say a spray password attack, I guess that means they just tried passwords till one worked. But why is there some server sitting on the public network, legacy non-production test tenant account, that has access to all of the corporate emails? Why is that just sitting in the public, sitting there?
Because someone forgot about it.
Yes.
I mean, like a lot of the things are like someone has some machine. And this, again, is why, a lot of us, that use Apple products don't want people to like hack into it from some other area, because we just don't think they're going to take even Apple.
That's
just
true.
Having one company manage it, having anybody else manage safety. I mean, this is Microsoft, this is their executives, and they still can't keep it closed. And so I mean, the NSA couldn't keep their stuff closed, and this is what they do.
That's right.
And so I think you always have to worry about every new person that's connected to you. Every new company is a threat. And this is, but I'm sure that it was a computer that no one has looked at for many, many years. It's been sitting around. No one's doing anything with it. And it somehow was bridged somewhere.
And Monkey 123 was the password. And, it wasn't secured. And the rest
This is the great paradox of large and small firms, that large firms are so big that it's impossible to know for sure all the things they're doing, and they have so many moving parts that you can never fully audit them. And then small firms don't have the resources to guard all of their perimeters. And so you either way you get some kind of unavoidable problems. I've just put something in the doc, one of the most remarkable articles I'd ever read from Wired about Amazon's it was from 2021 about Amazon's failure to protect user data. So Amazon, in order to move fast and break things, had no internal controls on their data, and literally any team could clone the entire Amazon database. They had no auditing, and they had no census of who was using what and how many copies have been made. They had all kinds of insider threats. They had people selling data to rival vendors. They had it was just crazy, but it was like they didn't want to get in the way of developing teams. And they could not hire a CSO because every CSO they hired said, stop doing that. And they were like, that's the thing you're not allowed to tell us. They promoted a guy from within who was, by his own admission, not qualified to do it, but he was someone who was willing to take as the kind of first principle that there should be unlimited replication of Amazon's entire data set with no auditing and no forensics.
Move fast and let others break into your
crisis.
things. Yeah. Wow.
The graph on Facebook, when we were doing back ends for Q&A, because I do a lot of Q&A stuff, the back end until Cambridge Analytica was pretty amazing. As a developer, you could the reason that our system is now able to handle so many questions coming in was because you could point it at any Facebook event. You just go that one. And it would just suck all of the questions and all of the every comment in the whole thing out of it. And we could say, oh, this broke. And now we threw it away because we were like, I don't want that data around. But obviously Cambridge Analytica just pointed at it and then kept it. And then Facebook, of course, closed that all up.
They've got away with the Cambridge Analytica thing pretty much by saying, yeah, okay, it was a slight problem.
It was wide open.
We're not going to deal with it. And you're just like, no, this is a massive issue.
Yeah, I mean it's much more closed down now. But again, these are all it gets inconvenient. It's inconvenient to lock the door every time you go in and out of it, but it might be useful. At some point someone's going to try to go down the street and check everybody's door and go into the one that's opened, and that's what happens. And a lot of these hacking, I mean, that's the thing that, like email, the thing that I have to do all the time is someone I have kids in school. So you have teachers, you have other administrators, and you have other parents that will send out these big emails to everyone. And I'm like, hey, that's like sneezing in the middle of a class, like when you have COVID. Like I just want to make sure you're clear. Like you're just putting us all in the same room where we all can get something, from what you're doing there. You got to stop, so I'm nice about it, but it's always like blind CC is a good thing. Like there's a reason it's there and you should use it. And I think that is, I think that all of us are so, because it's just not convenient. It's not convenient to lock your door all the time. It's not convenient. It's not convenient to do these things. And you're trying to move fast and everybody's trying to make, especially at Amazon, the pressure to perform at Amazon, from my understanding, is intense. No one ever said it's a relaxing place to
people at
work.
Amazon, and they're just like, this is possibly the worst working atmosphere we've ever had to deal with.
What did the whistleblower say? There were people crying at their desks. That was kind of SOP. That was normal. That executives would just sit at their desk going.
So speaking of door locks being inconvenient, you've reminded me. The first piece of technology that I've bought in a long time that I was really excited about is my new door lock.
Yay! What'd you get?
We went on vacation and we stayed in a house that had a touchpad door lock, and I was like, this has to be insecure, but it's so convenient. So I wrote to Deviant Olam, who runs the lockpicking village at DEF CON. I'm like, do they all suck? And he was like, they all suck except for the Schlage or Schlage.
Yeah, Schlage.
FE595, which we bought and installed because I work in the garage and then the house is on the other side, and my wife plays games with giant noise-canceling headphones. And one time someone just walked in and she didn't know he was there until she turned around. It was really scary. So she wants that door locked, but I want to be able to run in and out when, like if we're recording and then you call a break, I want to go get a glass of water. So now we have a push-button door lock, and it's amazing.
I hope you got it with the Camelot trim.
Oh no, we just got the matte black. We got the very boring matte black. But oh my God, it's really good, and it's easy to program, and we had it rekeyed so it matches our existing.
You know what I love about the idea of this is that you could send the key to somebody temporarily. Like, okay, you need to get in there and service something. This key is good for 12 hours.
So on Deviant Olam's, and it doesn't have any connectivity. There's no Wi-Fi. There's no NFC.
Good.
There's no Bluetooth. And on Deviant Olam's advice, what I did was I got it. I generated 20 codes for it, and I programmed them all in. And then they're in our family shared password store. And if someone's coming over, we just give them a password, and then when they leave, I delete it.
You can delete the code.
I mean, Deviant is the the bog standard on this, as it were. But one of the interesting things from the DEF CON talk on Bluetooth locks, they tested 12 Bluetooth locks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 11 of them were transmitting password keywords completely unencrypted.
Oh Lord!
And the one that was so badly made you could open it with a screwdriver. It's insanity.
But can I point out, locks are really just a suggestion anyway. They're just society's way of saying, yeah, we would prefer you don't kick this door down and come inside. But if anybody wants to come in, they can come in.
But there are firm suggestions and soft suggestions. and Olam is pretty good about this. If you've ever read the original Wirecutter article on bike locks, which is like a 15,000 word oral history of the guy who stole the reporter's bike, explaining how he did it and how he steals bikes, it's fantastic.
Yeah, where I grew up, no one locked their doors. Like there was just not a lot of doors getting locked, but they did oftentimes have signs out that said, "Are you faster than a speeding bullet? Trespass here, and you'll find out." And
well, that's probably more effective than any lock.
There wasn't a lot of locks. It was just like to forget the dog, beware of owner.
A lock pick kit? Aren't these illegal? Burke?
Oh yeah, no. I have a couple of them.
It's a project tool.
I bought a couple at DEF CON, so yeah.
And then Burke has actually etched his initials into it. So plausible deniability, Burke, is completely gone.
The only place I've ever had I've taken lock picks to Singapore. The only place I've ever had my lock picks taken away is Melbourne Airport, and literally only Melbourne Airport. And every single time I go through Melbourne Airport, and they take everything. They take my little screwdriver that came with my framework laptop. They took this little tip. They took just that and said, you can't have that. That's a threat to aviation. It's amazing.
No, I mean, it's kind of like when I was at SchmooCon and they, one of the companies gave away like one of those Swiss Army cards with like a cutting point on.
Oh yeah, I love
of
those. Yeah.
The amount of people that got pulled over on that at Washington Airport, absolutely amazing. I managed to get away with it, but you know.
I had like one of those little micro Leathermans, you know, the little micro Leathermans.
Yeah.
And I was flying from Harare to Victoria Falls, and I told the guy, I was like, oh, this was given to me by a friend. Can I just leave it with you and I'll come back and get it? You know, I was trying to, negotiate. And he's like,
schmooze him.
He looked at it and he just finally said, here, you can take it. He goes, but don't do anything bad with it.
Now that's what I like. That's the kind of security I like.
Just don't do it.
Just don't do anything bad, please.
Yeah. So,
I mean, the classic for that was GDC in 2013, where they gave out literally 2 years after September 11th, they gave out laser pointers in bullets. You know, so it was a bullet modified, and gave that to journalists. And
we have ones that you when you want to drop a mic cable down someone's back, you need a weight.
Yeah.
And they have one called the mic bullet, and you plug your TA3 or TA4 into it, and you just drop just a weight, and it just drops.
It looks like a bullet.
It looks like they thought it was funny, and they made it look like a bullet. And I'm like, I can't take it anywhere. I can't fly with this thing because it says bullet on the outside, and they don't know that it's a. I'm trying to explain to them.
They should rename it the Alec Baldwin, and then they'll be.
It's just.
What did you? Too soon.
Too soon.
I mean, what did you just go get, Cory? Cory just reached up to
I'm trying to get it to turn on because it's been dead for a long time. This is a countdown clock that counts how many people are estimated to be connected to the internet as of today. And it was the speaker gift for keynote speakers at the .se registry in Stockholm.
Exactly like a bomb.
And it's like a Perspex bomb. Yeah, it's just terrific. And I flew home to Heathrow with it. I think if I had been flying out of Heathrow with it, they would have taken away because they're giant dicks. The Swedes were very chill.
That's the countdown. No, we've seen that. That's okay. Bring it on in.
Turn it on because it's really cool. It's been unplugged for so long, and I think maybe it's got a little battery that might need to charge. Built by Rickard Diestrad.
I love that.
Diestrad.
You should charge it and see if it's
really
accurate.
Cool. Yeah.
I do think
what I'll do is I'll get the number off of it, and then I'll run around and count all the people on the internet.
I'm sure it's vastly underestimating the actual number by this time, right?
It has an Ethernet port, which I'd forgotten. I don't remember what that does.
So it can check. It actually goes out and counts.
It's a little raspy. It's got an HDMI out as well.
Oh yeah, you can put it on a screen.
Oh, here it is. It's lit up. There it is.
There he is.
There are 48.
It's okay.
It's going up.
Oh my word!
Is that billions? Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
no,
13.
Oh no, hang on. It's gone.
401 billion, 356 million, 206. I don't know what it is.
I don't know either.
It can't be 40 billion. There's only 7. Must be 401 million. It's wrong. There's 8 billion people. All right.
It's a nice display,
keeps going
though.
up, John.
It's something moving in the background.
Among linguists, the word of the year is more than a vibe. The American Dialect Society has selected a term, the word of the year for 2024. What is it? Enshittification.
And it's great because this is like the second or third time the Times has mentioned enshittification, but the first 2 times they called it things like enpoopification. But
for goodness sake.
But because they were reporting, it wasn't in the editorial page, it was reporting.
Yeah.
They called it enshittification.
I think it's okay. So we debated. We've been calling it enshirtification for a while.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
But then I realized it's not the S word. It's, it'd be as silly, just because a word has a word in it.
Like Scunthorpe.
Yeah.
Or shiitake.
Shiitake.
Like
yeah, that one really caused some problems.
It's in shiitake. So enshittification. It's not what you think it is.
It's kind of what you think it is. It's just a dirty little infix.
This American Dialect Society, though, picks. It's not like the Oxford English Dictionary word of the year.
Yeah,
it is more like a slangy kind of a thing, and it's fun.
It's great.
Yeah, congratulations.
It was terrific. And it took me a couple of days. At first, I kept calling them the Internet Dialectical Society, which sounds like Marxists.
Yes, no, but it's not that.
They've considered your thesis and your antithesis, and they've synthesized it, and this is your prize in shittification.
And they call this the WOTY, the word of the year. So congratulations for your WOTY. That's a very high
I just finished
honor.
the book proposal. It's with my agent. There's 3 publishers.
Do you have a name for it?
Enshittification.
Oh, there you go. Or you could call it impoopification.
Impoopification, no.
Oh, for goodness sake. America should grow up about this sort of thing. Call it what it is.
It's funny because I can't call it that on NPR. I've done like 3 interviews about it on NPR.
They
but
you?
Because the FCC rules. But the CBC, no problem. Canadian Radio and Tele.
Can you say shiitake on NPR?
Ask the FCC. I mean, you had a broadcast program. I think you've got a radio background.
I think they'd be okay if you said shiitake mushrooms, but if you said holy shiitake, I think they might.
No, that's fine. And I think in shittification, it's inside another larger controversial word.
It's a good general term. I mean, as a Brit who's over here who's got away with saying wanker on public air, then
you say it a lot, by the way. You say it far too often. I just want to point that out.
No, come on. It's a perfectly good descriptive noun. But I mean,
just don't ask what it means.
Enshittification is as well, because it describes a really massive problem we've got to deal with.
Good. I can't wait to read the book. I hope you'll come on before then. You do have a chance to see Cory speak in person on January 22nd. Tomorrow, if you are in Coral
Miami.
Gables. Oh, you're going to go where it's warm. You're not there now.
I'm going where it's warm. I'm going to Ron DeSantis country.
Will he allow you to even talk about your books?
Yeah.
I bet your books are banned in many libraries. I don't know.
Miami's pretty heavy. In fact, the only place I've ever had a book banned was Florida. Booker T. Washington High in Pensacola. Canceled their entire summer reading program to stop their kids from reading my book and tried to fire the teacher librarian.
Which one?
Little brother.
Little brother.
Sake. Yeah.
Good Lord. I'm so sorry. That's so ridiculous.
That's insane.
Lots of people have
What did
lots
they
of people have
object
it worse
to?
with their books.
What did they object
He had never read it. He
because there's
heard some things about it and said he thought maybe the families would object, and he never read it. And then he unilaterally canceled the whole summer reading program and ignored his own procedures that he was required to follow, which is why eventually that teacher was not fired. But the summer reading program is gone forever. And we did send 200 copies of the book to the school. And this company, I forget what they're called, but there's a company that does like T-shirts and posters where they make posters out of the word art of a whole book.
Oh, cool.
So we sent them a frame poster for their library. And then I also, any kid who wanted an ebook of it, I PGP signed ebooks for them and sent them to them. So they had signed ebooks along with a little tutorial on PGP.
Good for you. Well, let's hope this doesn't happen to enshittification, although
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Well, here's the deal. The Bezel is out and is legal in all 50 states. And if you want the audiobook version, go to Kickstarter and sign up. Look at the price. The backers is going up even as we speak. 9 days to go to get this audiobook. I got to tell you, the first Martin Hench book was incredible. I really enjoyed it. I read it to Lisa, who is a CFO. So she really enjoyed a forensic accountant being the hero of your story.
It really reminded me of Charlie Stross with the diaries there, where you got an IT administrator who was actually, doing really weird stuff.
Yeah, I've got to say, Cthulhu IT administrator.
Yeah.
That's Red Team Blues. The new one is The Bezel, and it's on Kickstarter if you want. I always get the audiobooks because I prefer to listen.
Will's so good. We had such a good time reading this. He did great.
He's so cute. And, of course, you'll find Cory at pluralistic.net. That's where his blog is, although I follow you on Mastodon, and you always post your clips from your blog up there on Mastodon, so that's a good follow. He's pluralistic on Mastodon. Thank you for being here, Cory. Have a great trip to Florida. Are you going to come right home after that, or are you going to spend some time?
Yeah, leaving at 4 a.m. tomorrow, and then I get back on Wednesday, and then on Thursday I fly to Berlin.
For the Marshall McLuhan lecture.
For the McLuhan lectures. And if you're in Berlin, they've just added another night at Otherland Books because the first one sold out. So there's at least some tickets left right now if you go to Otherland Books.
Great. Yeah. And it does specifically say no streaming. So you must be there. No streaming for humans only.
Approve.
Marshall McLuhan would not like that.
He hated media.
Right. Media schmedia. I think that's his famous quote.
My work.
You know nothing. Mr. Iain Thomson. Iain Thomson.
Oh, my word.
Terry Thomas. Iain Thomson. Without the mustache, you're really no longer Terry Thomas. You're Iain Thomson.
Yeah, no, I lost the porn mustache, but yeah, it was an interesting area of lockdown.
I liked it. I think you should bring it back personally, but that's just me.
It's just a pain in the ass to deal with. You've got to be clipping it the whole day.
I know. TheRegister.com. Iain, is there anything you want to plug?
I'm keeping an eye on the moon at the moment. JAXA soft landed a probe on the moon on Friday. It's looking pretty grim, but hey, I'm a huge fan of getting out there and going out into new areas. So we'll see.
Were you disappointed? That's the Japanese space agency. Were you disappointed that the private space contractor whose Peregrine was going to contain, or did contain, ashes from Arthur C. Clarke and Gene Roddenberry,
and it's burnt up in the atmosphere.
Yeah,
which honestly I can't help feeling Arthur C. Clarke would have approved of. But at the same time, I understand.
Well, part of it, apparently, some of the ashes were in the fairing, which did get pushed out and is going to keep going. So maybe he's going in to boldly go where no ashes have gone before.
My understanding was the entire craft was coming back into the UK. Back into
the UK.
Back into the world.
It's headed back to the UK, but it will burn up before it gets there, I promise.
The UK is the world.
Yes, that's right.
But no,
that's right.
But no, I mean, it was kind of nice they got them out there, but space is hard. You know,
is hard.
I mean, Japan has learned the hard way, and we'll get better at it.
Yeah, the Slim probe touched down, but the solar panels aren't.
I did get to do the real Slim Shady is shady headline, but
oh, there's sun, but there's just no panels to collect it. Okay.
Yeah, they'll get there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the moon should be probed more often, not less.
We need to get out there. But
that's what she said.
I was waiting for that one. Thank you, Cory. Thank you, Cory. Thank you, Mr. Alex Lindsay. OfficeHours.global, even on a Sunday.
Yes. That's what I didn't even know about that translation thing. It was in our morning session.
That's amazing.
So we do that every day, 7 days a week. We had Colleen Henry on.
I got to watch that. Our chief engineer. She's the woman who really built the stuff that we do.
Yeah. I think you go to the YouTube channel because it's not in the normal schedule. So we did a special with Colleen. And if you go to YouTube/Office Hours Global, it was just a special with the two of us talking about compression, how streaming works. And Colleen, if you don't know what she does now, she's kind of her invisible hand is touching pretty much every part of live streaming on the web for every company. So she's kind of the invisible force behind a lot of that stuff. And so she talked a little bit and answered a bunch of questions for our audience. And so it's a pretty great
There
session.
She is. She started it here.
Hi, everyone.
She was she applied to be an intern here. She was still at San Jose State learning sociology, getting her degree in sociology. And I talked to her for 5 minutes, and I said, I'm not going to hire you as an intern, but would you like to work for us? And she built Skypeosaurus. She built our first video rig. She did so many amazing things. And gosh, she looks great. It's so nice to see. I will be watching this. I can't wait to see it. She's really a superstar. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I'm so glad you did that. And OfficeHours.global, Monday through Sunday, is the place to go to learn more about everything, including video production,
media, but we talk about a little bit of everything.
Yeah, everything.
But we live stream from 7 to 9 Pacific Standard Time every single day. It's a small village of about 20 people that it takes to turn it on. So it's...
To me, this is like the future of media, especially as we struggle with traditional podcasting, which is show-based and advertising-based. Mm-hmm. And more I look at what you're doing and think, that the future of TWiT 3 or 4 years from now, maybe, is that kind of thing inside our club. And I think it's a great idea. I love it.
The two things that work is that, we built a system that allows us to have a lot more people in the panel. So what that means is that
how big is your box?
We get up to 16 people.
It's really amazing.
But there's a system on the back end that lets us cue them and that let them raise their hands and everything else. And then the other thing is it's just Q&A. It's much easier to program for when it's just like, hey, what questions do you have? And then the Q&A system that we built is pretty useful. So it allows people to ask questions, vote on questions. We can manage them on the back end. And then that Q&A system actually drives the video system. So when we say, we're going to answer this question, it actually goes and grabs the people that said they were going to answer it and then puts them up automatically. And so it's a little bit, so that it does make it, we do hope that more people will do it. We publish like how we do it. It's kind of open. It's
I will do it. I will do it. I volunteer. Format. You can help me.
We'll talk about it. Let's figure this out.
Yeah, I think it's kind of something our audience would really like.
I think it'd be really fun to get a bunch of us together just answering questions.
Well, we have a community. I mean, that's the thing. Any good podcast has a community that's about community.
I'll build you an instance, Leo.
Would you? Thank you. I appreciate it.
For free.
Alex will be back on Tuesday for Vision Pro Weekly, our new show on TWiT. It was MacBreak Weekly, but I have a feeling for the next few weeks, it's going to be kind of dominated by Vision Pro talk. And you will have one a week from Friday.
40 years of the Mac, there's going to be stuff to talk about. But yeah.
I am a complete Vision Pro skeptic. I call it Tim Cook's folly. I think it's nuts. But
I think we just won't know. I mean, we're in year 10 of a 20-year rollout, and so we don't know. Where it's going to go.
I bought the iPhone in the early days when it was kind of barely functional. But I liken this to buying a car with square wheels because they say someday it'll have round wheels and then you'll really love it. I'm going to wait to the round wheels. Thank you very much. This is not the one for me.
It's very strange, though, that Apple has, made a career out of taking technology people have developed and then making it much, much better. I'm not quite sure about the Vision Pro on this one.
It did that when Steve Jobs was there.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, there's a limit to how much you can polish a turd.
Yeah, and I will say though that most people, I've had the benefit of looking at non-production versions of VR, and when you get to a certain frame rate and resolution, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be breathtaking. I just doubt that anybody's going to want to do this.
I'm saying that this one isn't it either. Yeah. But I'm saying that when you reach a certain resolution per eye and when you reach a certain frame rate, the quality of the experience, it doesn't go like this in that frame rate. It goes, oh, it's really, really good. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It just, and it's
just, if they can get the frame rate and the eye tracking thing sorted, I'm all with it. But
this first version, I think, will be a step further along in that area, and it costs that much to do it. The ones that are non-production versions that I've put on are $250,000. They're not, but at 8K per eye, 120 frames a second, it is an entirely different world. Like it is like literally something that's hard to imagine. So
as soon as they
people
put
like
those
me who are
round
excited,
tires
it's
on
because
I will be there. I will be right there.
I think that what Apple is going to be it's going to be really interesting is to see how very basic things work in there. And the people that I've talked to that have had them on, of course, I haven't put them on until for another week and a half, are pretty impressed, except for the weight. Like that's what everyone talks about. It's like,
there's a lot of except
really
for
amazing.
Yeah. Cory, are you a fan of AR or VR?
Well, like I say, I'm too astigmatic for it. But what I was going to mention earlier is that as soon as I can take a month off touring, which will probably be at this rate 2026, I'm going to get both my eyes fixed because I have cataracts.
Oh,
and
nice.
when they fix your cataracts, you can get 3D printed lenses that fix your astigmatism and give you 20/20 with built-in bifocals.
Oh.
And so for the first time since like the age of 9, this is what I'm going to look like.
Cory, when you do that, I'm going to watch. And if you don't go blind and you can still drive a car at night, I might do the same because
I mean, I can barely drive a car at night now. I get halos and stuff from cataracts, so I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm
to be honest,
curious how
my wife says empty frames. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. It's like just glass frames there.
Because it is your trademark, isn't it, Cory? You kind of have those. You've always had those black frames. Yeah.
I'm very curious how the bifocal contacts or the bifocal lenses will work in a VR experience because you're seeing the whole thing.
That's going to be a huge map.
I think that could be a really complicated.
You don't need progressive lenses if everything is visible, right? Or do you?
I understand that.
Yeah, but I mean, my left eye is like the size of a rugby ball. It's that badly. And I've tried using these things, and if your eyesight is bad, then it's going to have to be addressed.
So this should sell as well as, let's say, an F-16 fighter.
Well, they've already. I mean, if the rumors are of the sales numbers have hit, they've already made $3 billion. I mean, it's not a profit, but they've already generated $3 billion of revenue from.
They sold out the first tranche, right? Which was what we think 100,000.
We think it's 80,000 is what we think the number is. Okay. Yeah, and so that number already that already went out because we know that because the first tranche was 80,000. And they're already moving the date. So the date is as soon as the date moves.
No, I think you actually is unavailable at this point. I haven't tried it, but the problem is in order to try it, you have to scan your face. You have to do this whole. You have to go through the whole process to find out.
You can't. You need an iPhone to order the. You can't go to the website and buy it. You need an iPhone to measure your face to get in. To do the thing. So it's interesting.
I went through the whole thing. I got up because I was on the East Coast. At least it was 8 a.m. I went through the whole thing. And right at the point, I was like, shall I do it? And right at the point where you do it, I said, yes, screw it. I'm not going to do this. I
just started on my iPhone. I was like, I bet you this is, because the for those of us who buy a lot of things at 5 a.m. when Apple releases it, the iPhone is way faster. The website breaks because there's so many people ordering at the same time.
This was not a problem.
Yeah,
this time
through.
The website did not break. I got to tell you.
No. I think this is 100th of a iPhone demand.
Yeah.
Like it's a tiny little thing.
Okay, I'm doing the scans right now. I'll let you all go. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it, Cory. Okay. Have a great trip to Miami.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Look after.
Thank you,
Cory. Cory, I just want to tell you, I didn't need to put this on the show, but the fun thing about forensics, with data, have you heard of Pittsburgh Plate Glass, PPG?
No.
Pittsburgh Plate Glass. They make Pittsburgh paints, and they make pretty much every.
I have PPG windshields. Yeah,
windshields and all the plate glass for pretty much every skyrise in the United States, and blah blah blah. They've done okay. And but back in about 100 years ago, their lead chemist quit, took all of the he took all the formulas for the glass.
Right. Oh, okay.
And their accountant took his orders and rebuilt he was very precise about his ordering. So they were able to use all the data of all the orders to figure out what the mix was for the glass and allow them, because he was, all his orders and everything else. So they had to go through, in this case, it wouldn't be spreadsheets, it would be ledgers and figuring all those things out and got the,
that's good competitive intelligence work. That's great.
Well, I went to a funeral this last year with for my father, and our great uncle set up the first electric taxi firm in London in 1897.
Wow!
And I've got one hell of an article preparing on this, but it's like it makes Elon Musk look like a piker. So
by the way, if you order today, I went through the process. March 4th availability.
It's moved a month.
So it has moved a month, but it's still there, still available, and you can go through the website pretty quick. Thank you, Cory.
Mike is really texting, demanding
get out of
dinner,
here.
So
get out of here. Thank you, Cory.
All right.
Thank you, Iain. Thank you, Alex. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We do
fantastic to see you all.
It was really a fun show. Thank you, Iain. Take care.
It was.
We do TWiT every Sunday, about 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2200 UTC. If you like to watch the shows live, we do provide a live stream of us making the show. It's not the final show, but the making of the show at YouTube, youtube.com/TWiT. That live stream goes live the minute we begin and ends the minute we end, which is right now. But you can't watch it. If you're a club member, the reason we do that is we want to encourage people to join the club because you can continue to watch before and after all the shows. So get to twit.tv/clubtwit and join. You can also download a show from twit.tv. All of our public shows are on the website. You can also subscribe in your favorite podcast client. There's even a YouTube channel dedicated to TWiT that's got all of the video episodes as well. Great way to share a clip if you want to do that. And I think Cory said a few things people might want to share with others. We do thank you for watching. A reminder to take the survey. It's not over yet, but it will be soon. Last chance to let us know what you think. We want people who watch every show, including this show, to respond so that we get a good idea of who the total audience is. both for our own internal use to decide what kind of programming to do and so forth, but also for advertising. We don't spy on you. This is the one way we can kind of tell advertisers a little bit about our demographics, not you specifically, just in general. The survey's at the website, twit.tv/survey24. And oh, by the way, if you know a company that would like to advertise on Twit, or perhaps your company would like to advertise on Twit, just remember, you can always email us. We'd love to hear from you. Advertise@twit.tv. I'm Leo Laporte. Thanks to our producer and board op today, Benito Gonzalez. Great job booking this show, Benito. Nice job. Wow. Thanks to our studio manager, Jammer B, our official lock picker, Burke McQuinn. By the way, Burke, here's a little irony on this lock pick tool you got me. I can't figure out how to open it. I can't. I literally can't. I guess I probably shouldn't have a lockpick. If you can't open the lockpick. We'll see you all next time. Another Twit is in the can. Take care.
Amazing.